Hello, everybody. We're going to go ahead and bring to order Truckee Meadows Water TMWA meeting for October 18th, 2023. Let's go ahead and have a roll call.
Andriola, Breckus, Thayer,
Here.
Dewar, Hill, here. Reese, alternate Bybee, here. Zimmerman,
Here.
Caviglia, here. We have a quorum, Mr. Chair.
That is wonderful. I appreciate that. Let's go ahead and stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Just visiting by, you want to be to work? My allegiance?
Absolutely, I know how to do that. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
It's always nice having Andy in the room with that deep voice that delivers over everybody. Just so you know, we are going to have lunch a little bit later today for everybody, and that'll be around 11:30 to 12. We'll just make a decision at that time of where we're at in the agenda, whether we're going to stop to do lunch and keep working or wait till we're done. So thank you so much. We are moving on to our public comment. Actually, before we do that, I'd like to have a moment of silence. And I know we just did this for another one of our employees, but Rourke Ludwig, a data analyst programmer for TMWA for almost 15 years, Vietnam vet, Coast Guard Rescue Reserve helicopter pilot, recently passed away a couple weeks ago. And we just want to give a moment to him as well and to his family. So if you don't mind, just a moment of silence. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. Moving on to public comment. Do we have any public comment?
No, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Do we have any possible board comments or acknowledgements? Very good. We are looking for either a conversation about the agenda or approval of the agenda.
Second.
I have a first and a second. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It passes unanimously. And number 6, we have approval of the minutes of the September 20, 2023 meeting of the TMWA Board of Directors.
Move to approve.
Second.
First and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Hey, we're gonna keep going. Let's rock. Discussion and action regarding general manager performance review for contract year 2022-2023. Ms. Jessica Atkinson.
Thank you. Morning, for the record, Jessica Atkinson. Before I turn it over for you to review Mr. Zimmerman's performance, I just wanted to take a few minutes and go through the 3 attachments that were included with this agenda item. These attachments were provided to inform the board and serve as resources when you do the performance evaluation today. So attachment 1 is the general manager's report of accomplishments related to goals set by the board last year. This was actually presented during the September board meeting. We attached it just as a reference document. Attachment 2 includes the results of the general manager evaluation survey. This was emailed to 13 individuals, which included Mr. Zimmerman's 6 division department heads and our 7 board members. This year we received 12 completed surveys. The responses for 11 of the 12 submissions are included in a report with an overall summary. In addition to the report of responses, there's a separate response from Director Breckus that was submitted on 10/16. Attachment 3 is Mr. Zimmerman's employment agreement. The GM contract between the board and Mr. Zimmerman states that Mr. Zimmerman's base salary shall adjust in incrementing steps on July 1st and each July 1st thereafter until he reaches the market step of the GM wage band. So consistent with this direction, on July 1st of this year, Mr. Zimmerman's base salary was adjusted from $223,297 annually to $245,923 annually. And the adjustment included a 4.88% increase for moving up a step, and then the 5% increase that was consistent with the general wage increase provided to all TMWA employees. Mr. Zimmerman's employment agreement limits the annual compensation adjustment, which includes base salary adjustment plus any lump sum award, to 10% of base salary. So as Mr. Zimmerman's contractual adjustment is just under the cap, outlined in his employment agreement. This agenda item asks only that the board review the general manager's performance for the past contract year. So with that, I'll take any questions or turn it over to you to review Mr. Zimmerman's performance.
I want to thank everyone for being a part of this process. I know it's always weird to do these things in public like we get to do, but I think it came out very well. I think it's good to have all the thoughts and all the different personalities come in and perspectives. So with that said, any questions or anything would like to be said? Fine.
I want to apologize for my delay in getting mine done. I had life going on, and I also had a laptop transition during the period. But for me, I do these separately. I don't think it meets the letter of the law to have them come out a survey monkey and for the public to not see what the individual comments and ratings are of board members. That's the standard I hold for myself. I understand in talking to another board attorney that person has them. So if a public record is ever requested, they can be disseminated because they are public records. But for me, I want to follow what I understand is the law, that they are done in public. In contrast to California, how you take your GM into or a city manager into a closed door and mash things over. I think that the law says that way. So that's how I do it for myself. That's why mine are going to always come in separate. With that, I support Mr. Zimmerman. I think he's done a good job. I'll say this, actually, he's exceeded my expectations when we elevated him to that position, because there were some tough times coming in. You know, we had a notable departure of one of our most important people in the organization who really enlightened to me in her exit, comments, some issues. And so I took that as we phased out with our last GM and our new GM, and I am pleased. But I am starting to look very skeptical of a lot of these chief executive contracts. Sparks, you've had your own issues. Reno, we had our issues. Our manager's under investigation. United Support extending his buyout from a half year to a full year. I don't think I would have supported it. He wasn't under investigation. With that, I noted that he has a 2-year contract that more or less rolls over. I'm starting to become very troubled with 2-year contracts for chief executives. I think, budgets operate 1 year. Everyone else in an organization, is more or less at will, or they're protected under some kind of collective bargaining, but due process. The 2 years is troubling to me. We get 4 years, some of us get 2 years, but we stand to the voters, and that's that way. I think the discretion of a body to put out a GM for 2 years a contract when they're valued every year is problematic, and I just don't even think it's consistent with what the hiring world is like. Say you have a GM who leaves, you have to buy them out, and these people with so much demand for well-established managers, they can't have their pick of jobs out there. What they offer is in high demand and need in the workforce. So I don't see a reason to give them 2 years of job security. That's very rare. So how does this work? Let's just say some scenarios. Can I go on?
Sure. Okay. I'll give you.
So if we approve this, he gets 2 years job contract, correct?
No, I don't believe that's the case. There was the original term, and this might be a better question for Justina with the actual language of the contract, but the contract had an original term that I believe was a 2-year term.
Well, I see 5.2 on page 2. If the extension term is exercised, the parties agreed to meet and confer no later than, May 31, 2027, to decide if the parties will negotiate an amendment to this contract. So it seems like the contract is in place until then.
So there's a 2-year term. I wasn't involved in writing this contract, so this is basically how I've read it. There's an initial 2-year term that goes until October 15, 2024, an automatic 2 years at that point, unless either party decides to terminate it, and then there could be a renewal of the contract in 2026.
The one thing I do want to be careful is we are focused just in the sense of this conversation, and I say that if we all determine that we want to have a conversation, how we do the contract in the future, that we're stylized actually to just go over what
The performance.
performance. So
And I was
we're starting to venture a little
Okay.
bit
So,
here. So
yeah.
The contract is not
Yeah.
out for today.
Yeah, it's just the contract is in the packet, so so it really, my case is being made that this board at this point doesn't get a shot on the contract.
That is correct. The contract was approved last year for a 2-year term.
So
The
it
contract's not up until.
Okay.
is not, that is not for today. Today we were evaluating.
Okay, okay.
Today is an evaluation. That is
Okay.
what today is for.
Okay, well, I'm gonna still make my points that the contract should be up at point of evaluation. They should not be able to live for 2 years. I find that correct. And so when is it up for?
The initial 2-year term is up October of 2020.
October of 2024. So we'll sit here next year at this time, and if we don't do anything, there's an additional 2-year add-on.
So, but thank you, but I would
Yeah,
say,
okay.
we do have options, and I say that if
Okay.
for some reason this gentleman decides that he's not gonna do what we're asked, then that we can visit that, and we have time to walk that out. But again, going back to our conversation today, but thank you, and again, if that's something that we ever wanna have a conversation about, we all serve a lot of boards, we know how to do that, we just bring it up, and if the rest of us would agree with something like that, then that's how it moves forward. And that can be done at any time. So, but with that said, this evaluation, I very much support it. I think that he's done a good job. I appreciate that. You know, the one thing I've watched, and this is not always easy to do, is we all have a lot of different purviews and a lot of different things that we expect. And he's found ways to come in and try to work with each person, and I've noticed that. And so I appreciate that. So, do you have anything you want to say? Anybody?
Sure, Mr. Chairman. It's been a pleasure to work with you, Mr. Zimmerman, and I can tell that you're really trying to get to know the staff and see how you can support the team to, meet the high expectation and goals of this board. And I agree with the chairman about how you have responded to all the diverse requests of this board. I feel heard and listened to. So thank you so much for that. And also with Ms. Breckus, I agree that, I've been blown away by your performance. So just for transparency, and I didn't realize that SurveyMonkey doesn't point out what board says what comments, but I did exceed expectations on all of my review for you. And the only thing that I asked is just to continue to push for diversity of hiring and leadership, as well as within the organization at TMWA, and we talked about that as well, but offline. But I think you're doing a really great job, and I'm looking forward to tackling the challenges of the future with you and your great team. So thank you. It's been great working with you.
Anything you want to share, Mr. Reese?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So like my colleagues to my right, I'm very thankful for your leadership, Mr. Zimmerman. All of my comments were exceeds expectations, in part because you have done that, but also in part because I think we all are evaluating not only you, but we're thinking about the other boards that we sit on and making comparisons between other agency heads. And you are an absolute joy to work with, just personally. I have been very thankful for 2 things in particular. One is how you communicate with each of us. We are a diverse group of people as board members, and it is not always the case that everyone is able to navigate that diversity as easily as you have been able to do so. So I thank you for that. Second is I am very impressed by your efforts to work with staff to create a really good and welcoming environment for people to work at this organizational agency. I will say that it is very difficult to be the head of any agency given some of the political climate we operate under and just the pressures of an economy that seems to be sort of stalled a little bit. And so I want to say thank you for your leadership. And I see little things like the barbecue that may this regular time this summer as an opportunity to engage with our staff in a meaningful way. So thank you for that. Absolutely well-deserved. The performance evaluation speaks for itself. I have a question for Ms. Atkinson, I guess. And so I did not totally understand the explanation about the compensation. So today, are we stylized, and maybe for Ms. Quigley as well, to evaluate either a one-time increase in salary or compensation? I'm not sure I understood your point about
the ranges and where they were met. So how are we to proceed forward today as a board?
So that we're stylized just for the evaluation of the performance. Within the actual employment agreement, it sets a cap on the most that can be awarded in any 1 year. And so with the step that he received in July with the general wage increase, it puts it just slightly under that cap. So essentially this year would have been maxed out anyway, which is why it's stylized for just the evaluation.
So even one-time money cannot exceed the cap, because you said it was the 10%.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I think that's something we'll have to discuss another time, because I feel like all employees, especially those who are leading agencies, are deserving of either performance related or monetary compensation for the job well done. I think it's a difficult place for us to be in as folks sitting on this side and making those determinations, not to see the value that someone brings to an organization. You know, there was some conversation earlier about the length and duration of the contract, and we know how difficult it is to lead organizations. And so I want to make sure that we don't have turnover, because that turnover in organizational leadership, for every time we do have turnover, it really takes years to recover from that in some cases. So continuity and then the ability to lead is impactful. So although I appreciate understanding the answer you've given, I think it will be something that we'll perhaps need to address and the chair will take up at another time, because I'm not sure I feel that it is as fair as we can be to our director.
So I want to say too, there is 0.7% left on the table. It's not, he's at 9.3%. To my understanding. And with that said, that is a conversation that I don't mind having anytime. So you could even bring it and say, hey, let's bring that back in our employee, just to even say, let's make it the top if that's what you guys so choose. However, it's not on there because John asked for it not to be on there.
Understood.
I just want to make sure.
And we have some great leaders in
Yes.
this community, and many of them are very selfless because they want to be good leaders.
Exactly.
And I also want to make sure that we recognize talent. So perhaps this is just a conversation for another day, and you can find an opportunity if that should be, according to your will, to be brought back.
Can I just Ms. Bybee first and then come back? I only say that, I know she's just here, but I can say one of the things that I like that he does is reach out to people who are not even on this board. And I know that, do you have anything you'd like to share at all? And a little bit of what you know about TMWA? I know I'm not looking for any profound. I know you're looking to water, you're here to hang out.
Just, they're like putting me right on the spot. I've done water, sewer, I do all the economic development planning, RCBA. So yeah, I'm kind of literally, like I told a couple of people, I'm in uncharted waters this morning with this board. So I haven't sat on here. I read through the whole packet. I was very impressed with the comments and the evaluation and the breakdown. I mean, we do these for on all the different boards with our own managers, with CEOs. And so very familiar with the process, really was impressed with the evaluations, and actually only met Mr. Zimmerman when he came to Sparks last week and did a special briefing on the PFAS situation that to make sure we were all clear on that. So I really, my input is just trusting all of you who know what you're doing, who would be honest. I know most of you, and everybody would be honest in their evaluations if there were issues and challenges. Well, we all have challenges, but obviously Mr. Zimmerman, you're meeting those challenges and working with this board, and sometimes that's the hardest lift, is working with these diverse boards who come in from the different jurisdictions and all have different personalities and priorities. So really, I just kudos for the work you're doing so far. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to make sure that. Okay. Ms. Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Zimmerman, did you not ask for additional pages to be in equity with the employees, because the employees can't? I'm just curious, the reason that you didn't ask for it, just to ensure that you have the same level of pay as, or increases of salary, because that's the same that the employees receive. That's sometimes what our manager does.
Yeah, I mean, it was twofold. I think I'm fairly compensated for what I do. I think the increases with the STEP and the LMI were more than appreciated for what I do. And there was just a small increase remaining under the 10% cap, so I saw no need to put that on for an agenda item. And I do think at TMWA we work so much as a team that I don't want to be treated any different than staff or employees that have the same increase.
That's good leadership, so thank you for that.
Very good. And we're looking for, if there's nothing else to be shared, this is for possible action, though it is just really accepting of that. So I don't know that we really need action on that, do we, Christine? Is that an action item?
It
Okay.
would be an action item.
Okay, then I'm looking for a motion to accept the assumption.
Second.
First,
I'd like clarity on the motion. That's part of my view on how these evaluations are done. So what exactly are we accepting?
we're accepting what is in this packet.
The results.
The results.
The results, okay, and that comports with the terms of the contract under an evaluation, just more or less a aggregation of different members' perspectives.
You're pretty much saying you've read what everyone else has said, and what you said is accurate.
Yeah, okay,
Because there's it's no stylized to change anything at this moment.
yeah.
It's just an acceptance.
No, I just didn't know if that reverted to some language in the contract
No.
that says that he must have an evaluation above a certain, of some format, so, okay, thank you.
First and second, any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. I'm glad you're sticking around. We're moving on to our water supply update with Bill. And how are we doing? I think you're having too much fun this year.
Yeah, it's making my life easier. So, Bill out for the record and have a very brief water supply update for you this month. So as you all know, 2023 was a massive snowpack year. Runoff was almost 3 times normal. And the April 1st snowpack in the Truckee Basin was actually set an all-time record. And in this hydrograph, you can see that this year, the water that came into Lake Tahoe, the runoff, in effect, ended the 3-year drought, 2020, 21. Lake Tahoe started out about a half a foot below the rim on December 1st and physically rose 5 feet until it peaked in the middle of July. And all the other reservoirs on the Truckee River system filled and actually spilled this year as well. So not only was it a great water year in the Sierra Nevadas, but across all of California and Nevada as well, as you can see here in this latest drought monitor. Tremendous amount of precipitation fell. In fact, the Weather Service, as measured at the Reno Tahoe Airport, determined this is the second wettest water year on record, with 15.4 inches of precip measured, normal 7.5. So, except for the extreme southeast portion of the state, Las Vegas area, which is off the Colorado system, which is still abnormal dry, it was a heck of a water year all around. Upstream reservoirs in the Truckee system are still being brought down as we speak to wintertime flood control elevation because they were completely full and there's minimum flood space that's required. And so some of them, like Stampede, are still being brought down because it's such a good water year. Normally they're already down, last time. They're in effect dumping water to make room for what's considered normal flood control elevations for wintertime operations. So we're in great shape as we approach the winter months. We have about as much carryover storage as we could possibly have going into the winter. And the region is extremely well positioned, I would say, from a water supply perspective to meet any challenges. So regardless of what happens this winter, as far as snowpack is concerned, we're on track to have normal river flows all of next year and well into 2025.
So that means normal operations. If you look at the area graph on the left, it's going to be similar. 2024 will be similar to what we've experienced the last 2 years, 2022 and 23. Normal operations, where the large, vast majority of our supply comes directly from the Turkey River, and we bring on groundwater production wells to meet summertime peaking demands. Compare that to 2015, which is a real severe drought, the severest one in my career. That is Plan B, I would call it. You can see here, this is how we actually operated in 2015. River flows dropped out about the middle of June. Will Raymond and I had a plan to not bring on any wells until that point. You can see in brown, we kicked on all the production wells and we started making releases from the upstream reservoirs at that time. Stampede, Boca, and Independence and Donner. So we don't like to operate like that. That's definitely Plan B. So, but just for the next 2 years, it looks like we're in really good shape regardless of what happens this winter. So just to recap quickly, awesome snowpack year last year, largest ever recorded in the Tahoe Basin on April 1st, effectively ended a 3-year drought in the Truckee system. Record stream flow runoff also occurred with all the reservoirs filling and spilling. Tahoe came quite close to filling, actually rose 5.8 feet until it peaked in mid-July. As a result, we're going to go into this winter with a tremendous amount of upstream, what called carryover storage, which is the hedge against drought. And an average winter next year or something close will probably fill Lake Tahoe once again next year. So normal river flows projected once again all through next year and well into 2025. And we are extremely well positioned from a water supply perspective. Things really couldn't be better. With that, I'll take questions.
Yes.
I have a question on, I noticed, I was at the Tahoe during the summer and they didn't open the gates. And I guess I know because my brother-in-law was home near there and they never had any of the rafting. Those were closed all summer. And you're looking at the lake, it's just massive. And I'm sure it has to do with TROA. I'm sure it's more complex than you're making a decision here. But just curious, when there was so much in Tahoe, normally you'll see limited one gate or two. Sometimes you see all the gates open. I was just curious if you or someone else has a little more
it really is
curiosity.
Really is counterintuitive. When you have a really big water year like this, so there's required rates of flow at the California state line. And when those required rates of flow at the California state line are being met by natural runoff, which in a year like this, it was met through July, there was no releases from Tahoe could be made by law, legally. So minimum flow is 70 cubic feet per second, which is not enough for rafting. You need about 250 to 300 bare minimum for rafting in the Tahoe. It's really counterintuitive, and the water master has to operate by those guidelines. He can't release water if floors and rates are being met by other means. So yeah, he takes a lot of heat in years like this. He gets calls from governors and senators and congressmen and high-powered people telling him to open up the gates, and he can't. So completely counterintuitive, and it just doesn't make sense. Okay. But that's how the law of the Truckee.
Thank you. That answers my question. Thank you.
I have one question. What happens if we have a really strong winter again? Are we ever in trouble that we have too much water?
Yes, it is a possibility.
I thought I knew the answer. So
you were here in '97.
Yeah.
So, there are minimum flood control. There's minimum flood control space, which has to be maintained by the Army Corps of Engineers, and we're working with them now to revise that. But in a year like this, my gut tells me that we're due for an average of every year. I don't have a crystal ball, but my gut tells me we're probably due for another average, potentially better than average year. If we get significant rains in November and December, you could see some more dumping in the reservoirs. But we are doing, what's called FIRO right now. We're using the latest forecasting technology, which we get 7 to 10 days in advance. So we have advanced warnings for these big systems as they come in. We will begin dumping reservoirs to make room for that precip as much as we could. We did get a waiver this year from the Army Corps of Engineers to begin operating the way we've suggested, not officially, kind of a handshake deal, but Army Corps is allowing us to operate a little bit more like we had suggested, letting us start filling earlier and not dumping the reservoirs as much as we normally would in the fall. So, but yeah, it's a possibility, and looking at the projections, there is, I think it's, yeah, if any of them do spill, it's going to be Storm Peak first. Tahoe still less than a foot and a half of storage in it, but Tahoe as well, if we get into a situation like that, could begin dumping in anticipation of a big event.
Any other questions? Good. Well, we like you this year. And we've always liked you. We like information, I meant to say. Okay, required communications from Mike Bailey in regards to Tumblr's annual financial audit. Sophie Carter.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Nice to see you this evening. I'm Sophie Cardinal, Tumblr's financial controller, and the item I brought before you today is a required communication from Mike Bailey, our financial statement auditing firm. The letter is pretty straightforward. It basically states that they're auditing our financial statements for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2023. It outlines their responsibilities and then it details the scope of their engagement. This letter is presented to the board every year as informational only. So I don't need you to take action today. It's just a FYI. The audit is underway. We're on week 2 of field work and things are going well. That's my spiel.
Very good. Any questions?
Well, I mean, we're currently in the planning stages. We have preliminary identified the following significant risks that require special audit considerations. That sounds more than we've had in the past being called out, isn't it?
Which part are you referring
The
to?
management override of controls.
Well, that's
Okay.
definitely part of
Just
their,
typical.
it's
Okay.
standard audit procedures
Okay.
and audit language. This letter was written in July. We bring it to you every year in October.
Okay.
So when this letter
Okay.
was drafted, it's really talking about our planning of the audit.
Okay.
But right now, we're actually in the audit itself, so
Okay.
they're testing all of our documentation.
And so they are mid-process. They'll issue a report November 30, and then we will have a December meeting to accept the.
That's exactly
And this
right.
is the document formerly known as the CAPR.
Yes, although we changed the acronym to ACFR,
APCR,
Yeah.
yeah,
our annual comprehensive financial report.
okay,
But you've got the timing right. They hope to issue their report by the end of November and we'll be back to you in December.
okay,
By then it's old news though, because Matt's giving you all of the highlights, so
yeah.
we're not expecting anything crazy this year.
Great. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
On to 11, discussion of possible approval of the 2040 water facility plan. Oh, did I miss one? Oh, I'm sorry. I checked it out. Presentation of Tumblr's fiscal year 2023 customer satisfaction study. Robert Charpentier.
Good morning, Robert Charpentier, Director of Water Authority. So I'm going to walk you through our responses from our latest wave of customer satisfaction surveys. This is the third in the new survey process since we got away from doing a phone-based methodology to email-based. So what we're seeing, what the numbers that we've had, if you turn to, or actually, Sonia, go ahead, control. Okay, I'm going to take you to slide 3. So the answer to the big question, do they still love us? We're doing well. The customer satisfaction is high. Something I would like to point out about this slide is that it's based on the 5 stages: extremely satisfied, satisfied, neutral, extremely dissatisfied, or dissatisfied. I skipped. So when you see 4% in the first 2 waves and 5% in the third wave, that's those last 2 categories: dissatisfied or extremely dissatisfied. So everybody else is, so this last wave, 82% are either extremely satisfied or satisfied, 13% neutral. So not much change. Go to the next slide. So this is some of the issues that people focused on. A little bit different outcome here in terms from issue to issue. So my water bill is easy to understand. People are very satisfied. I receive high quality. Again, very satisfied. Keep in mind, this is a 5-star score. So, imagine like you're looking at any review. People are doing these. They're clicking through. They're clicking 4 stars, 3 stars, 5 stars. So it gives you a sense of how people are essentially, voting as they go through these questions. I trust Tumblr to effectively manage our water supplies. Yes, all the way up to neutral. 7%, don't know, or they're, or they don't. So that's, you can read that. Tumblr's water management approach is based on sound science and information. Again, all of these scores are very strong. The one that caught my attention is the last one, and it shows up further along as we get into this presentation. The water I received is reasonably priced, and certain amount of analysis, but in also customer comments point to the fact that inflation wasn't a good year when it comes to inflation. Within the comments, there were remarks regarding other utilities and services that they pay for. So customers had just an elevated awareness of this. So obviously, as they go through a survey like this, it's going to draw their attention, and their general displeasure is going to be reflected in what they say here. So this is where we essentially are gauging the agreement of customers with the statements that are below each of these columns. Not much change from wave to wave. Water bill is easy to read and understand. Drinking water is of high quality. Tumblr effectively manages the water. These are all coming in fairly high, not too different. Again, water is reasonably priced, significant decrease. This first statistically significant decrease of all of these. And again, I would attribute this to just general awareness of inflation. Tone satisfaction. Let's see. Oh, this was so. How many of our customers have an online account? So this email list is generated mostly from customers who have online accounts. So the result is somewhat predictable. We do have a lot of legacy emails from before we installed the new system. So there will be a certain percentage who don't, and that's reflected in the number you see there. They have an account and they find the online system easy to use. Again, pretty strong numbers, again, on a 5-star scale. By the way, please stop me if you have any questions or remarks. So I find this very interesting, the level of interest in how Tumblr will manage the region's water. So, so how interested are the customers in these various categories? Maintain high quality water, of course, keep water available, of course. Meets the needs of a growing population. That's the growth issue. It's always out there. It's fairly high. Have a sufficient water supply. We should have put a snowflake on this slide to indicate the heavy water year. It's just, there's a direct correlation between the amount of snow we have, the amount of water we have, and how concerned our people are about that. Managing effects of climate change, however you may feel about that issue, it's just, I think for a lot of people, it's pretty hard to get their head around exactly how one would do that. So that's my take on why this number is fairly low, like customers would have an interest in that in the context of this survey. So awareness of assigned day watering, this is a pretty strong slide. So, if they're aware of the assigned day watering program, we're talking at 90th percentile, well above in every single case. If you have them on, how often do you follow it? Again, very, very high numbers, very strong numbers, and points to the success of our outreach, which, as you all know, we lean very heavily into that. So this is interesting because we're a growing region, and awareness obviously goes down with the word moved to the region. So if nothing else, it encourages us to keep up the work on reminding people what they're supposed to do in the summertime. Okay, the main motivations for conserving water. I love this. It's help protect natural resources. It's sort of the resounding, answer. To help lower my water bill. So okay, it goes up again. Let's talk about inflation. That's more top of mind. The right thing to do for the community. I don't know. Read that one how you will. How people feel well was right for the community. Staying within guidelines and not a priority for me came in very low. So again, so here's a regression analysis which indicates which factors weigh most heavily into people's satisfaction with Tumblr. So in the first 2 waves, scientific management of the water resources was very heavily influential. And it's the only change because in this last wave, it went from scientific to effective management of the water resources. And in our conversations internally, it's kind of 2 shades of the same color. How it if we want to delve into exactly why they were maybe leaning more towards the scientific solutions, you can read into the comments. Nothing really jumps out to me. The other two high influences were price and water quality, and again, there's no change there. So that's it for the presentation. Any questions?
Are these residential or non-residential customers about?
These are residential. Yeah, they're all residential.
All residential, okay. And then in Reno, we're approaching 50%
renters. So if it's email to customers, how do you capture people, residents who don't pay the water bill themselves? It's buried into their rent costs.
Yeah, it's a good question, and I think, generally our outreach targets everybody. It's on the television, it's on the radio, it's online. But more precisely, is when you think about the amount of water we're trying to conserve, so the preponderance of water that we're trying to conserve in the summertime would be outdoor watering. So if you're renting and you're in an apartment, you're less like, no, there are people who rent homes to be sure, but if you're in an apartment, that's less of a concern. So the percentage of water they can save would be things like don't let the sink run on.
Yeah.
So the emphasis is different, the dynamics are much different.
Yeah, I can see that. I'd have to ponder on that a little bit more because, are we really looking for trust in public, trust in a government service, and so that extends to all people. And if you don't have a measurement that's capturing, a certain a very significant percentage of your population, you're maybe not gauging that, well, and that can have outcomes in other areas.
No, it's
certainly if you ever went out for a bond, to the vote of the people, not that we do that, we have a lot of flexibility here, but anyway.
It's a good point, and we'll bring it up in our strategic planning session, our communications planning session later this year, and just see if we can.
Yeah.
Just like the last time we ran this, I'd love to get the written or the little survey comments from this. That would be helpful, just to understand a bit more on the pricing issue and how we make sure we message it correctly when we're increasing the pricing. It's the biggest thing that our customers seem to be worried about right now. And I agree with Councilwoman Breckes, because it would be helpful to understand what even renters are thinking about water quality. And that's a question we ask. So maybe there's a way we can capture that when we go to our events with our trailer. I know it's a different kind of messaging that we're doing with that, but maybe there's a way we can capture emails that way. Get more diverse.
I'm always interested in the education piece, because I think as we educate everybody and understand about water soaps, you have a little bit of that in here. And so if there's ever any more information on how that's being received or what are we doing, I think education is a weird thing. Most people don't. Some people want it, but most people don't until they have it, and then they're glad they have it. And so it's not always easy to do, but it would be very interesting as we talk about this, is that we are really teaching the next generation. I know we do a lot of outreach and we do a lot of that. And so I'm interested in that piece that says a lot about, it even speaks, because some of these things will come and go. We have inflation this year. All utilities have gone up. Everyone's going to complain about every utility. And don't get me wrong, we should be listening. I'm not saying that it doesn't matter. That matters very much, but some of these other things, that longevity of education is critical.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. We have many programs where we're looking into that, and not just about conservation, really. Like as we get into the public outreach for the rate adjustment, it is about getting out there with the public and informing them why these things are necessary and why they're essentially brings more value to them in the long run versus a more short-term perspective on those issues. So, and it's not an easy story to tell. It's not an easy thing to get across, which is why you have to stay on it and make sure you really bring the information.
Any other questions? This is an item that we are looking for. This is just a study.
I'll just get to go.
Very good. You're good to go.
Thanks so much.
We're going to need to take a quick 5-minute break, so we're going to go ahead and do that. We have stuff going on. All right. So Get some food, get some drinks, hang out. On to item 11, discussion and possible approval of the 2040 water facility plan and direction to staff on updating the water system facility fees. Danny Roder and David Kershaw.
All right. Thanks for getting to some technical stuff today. So I just wanted to say, introduce you to a couple people, and then Dave will introduce a couple more. Dave Kershaw has been engineering manager of the new business and cleaning for a little over a year. They've been working on this a lot. And then one more I want to introduce you to is David Kershaw, David Deagle, the other David, right there in the One Water Nevada shirt. He's been engineering manager here recently over the design and construction group. And so I just want to put a face with a name there. I'm just really blessed to have a really good team. And so anything that you see that says engineering that's good is because of them. So,
and you broke everything.
And I broke everything else. Yep. That's how it is.
He is an engineer.
Let's see here. We got this. Can we get the presentation there up? So. I'm controlling right here.
Yes.
Okay, got it. All right, so I'm going to give you some high-level discussion here and hand it off today. This is how we plan at Tumble. We have a resource plan that looks out 20 and even longer in terms of climate change for our resources, and you saw that in the last couple of years. Really great job by resources. We then piggyback off of how much water do we need. We look into the facility plan now 20 years. Where does it need to go? Spanish Springs, North Valley, South Truckee Meadows, et cetera, et cetera. And then that rolls into our 5-year funding plan, which we do every year. And so this process we've done before, and this is our 4th iteration of our facility plan since the inception of TMWA. And that goal is that 20-year CIP roadmap. And so things change throughout that 5-year period, as we know, but this kind of gives us the guide of where we're headed. And then it also helps with setting our water system facility charges and connection fees, and we'll talk a bit about that at the end. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Dave and his team. All right. Oh, real quick. In your packet, you only have the first 50 pages. The rest of it is talking about critical infrastructure, and it's confidential. We don't want that out in the public. If there are specific questions, we can go through them, but it's 780 pages. A really good engineering snoozer, if you'd like. So the one thing I want to point out too in that, there's the design criteria listed there as part of the public record. We've had discussions here recently in front of the board as far as an appeal of some of our decisions related to looping and NAC criteria. So just wanted that out in the open. This is what we do. This is how we provide a high level of service, is meeting those design criteria. So with that, I'll hand it out.
Okay. Go to the next slide.
Oh, part of your engineering class?
Yeah, touched it, it broke. There we go. Oh. Yep. There we go, okay. As Danny mentioned, Dave Kershaw, engineering manager for the record. First thing before I get into kind of an overview summary of how we update the water facility plan, I want to definitely acknowledge the planning engineers that worked on this for the last year with a significant amount of time and effort, in addition to their day jobs of supporting new development, the ops group, and planning other items as well. And so again, so big nod, I definitely want to get Polly Flores as one of our planning engineers, Tim Simpson, Jason, and Brooke. Definitely could not have done this without them, as well as EMIS group, there's pulling the meter data, the GIS group as well. But these are definitely workforces of getting this put together. And it's been a year-long effort getting there. So with that, we'll kind of go through the update at this point. So multiple steps in regards to updating the water facility plan. Kind of the first step of it is getting existing demand data, incorporating that into our computer models, our distribution computer models, our hydraulic models, and calibrating that model. And then as we move forward to kind of projection of growth into our system, we have scenarios we set up, the planning years 2025, 2030, 2035. And then once we run those models, we develop this roadmap for capital improvements. So basically it's identifying facilities that are needed to meet and comply with any Nevada administrative code requirements for serving potable water, both now and in the future. It's kind of some of the scenarios we model in addition to maximum day demands. We also look at off-river emergency, redundancy, seasonal operation of the system as well. We identify the timing of facilities, update cost estimates for these future CIPs, and then ultimately all this goes in to feed into an update of the water system facility charges, which are the connection fees for developers and growth. Just kind of give you a little bit of a historical look at our facility plans and how they compare to actual demands. And so you can see what our actual demand was and how close our predictions were from the various previous facility plans, and generally between 5 and 20%. And probably the key takeaway on this is when we do our predictions, we definitely want to be conservative and a little higher than actuals occur. We don't want to be constrained in regards to not having capacity for new development, so we're always kind of in front of that curve. And you'll see another graph coming up here that kind of shows that graphically. And some of those reasons we want to be in front of that actual curve is there's annual variability in what the maximum day is going to be. So we want to make sure we have that little bit of slush in there, and then and how demand growth actually occurs as it moves forward versus our predictions. And given that there is a spike in demand growth, we want, it's going to take 3 to 5 years to build a facility to add capacity to the system. So we definitely want to have that little bit of flexibility in our predictions. But again, we also don't want to over-predict and have stranded assets or build things too soon, because that also impacts connection fees. And so we're trying to optimize it, but we also want to be conservative. And so as we move through the facility plan update, one of the first pieces of it is the predictions of what growth can occur from now until 2040. And the basis of that is our water resource plan growth projections. And those growth projections are based off a variety of sources listed there, as well as some internal methodology associated with TMWA. The resulting growth curve that you see here is what comes out of the water resource plan in regards to acre feet of use in each of those years as a projection, a prediction. Looking at about 14% growth over a 20-year period.
We then convert that through a variety of means to get into what we would see as a GPM, maximum day GPM going forward as well. And so for the facility plan itself, we have our starting point, and in this particular case, 2021 billing data is being used as our starting point for the facility plan update. And so we have a little over 105,000 GPM maximum day demand. And then we start adding on what the predicted growth is in each of those 5 years going out to 2040. And this is that other figure I was mentioning too, in regards to our historical projections versus actuals. And so you got the various facility plan growth projections. And then the black line there is our current projection, and the squiggly line at the bottom there is our actual maximum day demands that are occurring in the past 10 and 13 years or so. You can see the inherent variability in that, and then also where we kind of been versus the predictions. And so as the years have gone by, our predictions are definitely more conservative. Early on, we've been able to tighten those up. Our growth that we predicted has not been, the actual growth has not been as much as we predicted. And there's a variety of reasons for that. I've gone through in the past, and a lot of, it's metering all services, tiered rates, changing irrigation days and times, drought and conservation demand hardening. Other pieces of that are associated with new development, the types of new development we're seeing basically less, you talk about single family residential, you're seeing smaller lots, less lawn, and it's really the irrigation that drives that maximum day demand throughout our system. So all those things factoring in, currently we have lower maximum day demand than previously predicted, and then also our projected growth has declined as well. So. Next step, the facility plan updates is once we develop those growth projections per time period, there's a significant effort that occurs in regards to how do we allocate those growth, those demands out in space in our system. So we have some regional areas we're looking at here and trying to allocate it out to those areas. We base a lot of that on internal knowledge in regards to what we're seeing as new business coming in, open space. Also, we kind of integrate that also with Truckee Meadows Regional Planning Agency growth forecasts, compare, and then just kind of staff knowledge in our many discussions with developers throughout the region where we're seeing activity and using our best educated guess in regards to where that growth is going to be allocated. And again, as you would think, areas that are currently developed, Old Southwest, Old Reno, you don't have much development or redevelopment going on in those areas, and so you wouldn't allocate much growth into those areas. You're really looking at the extremities of open space. There is some core redevelopment going on, as many of you are aware, in regards to densification, so we allocate some new demands in those areas. So given all those factors, this is kind of the result of where we ended up allocating future demands, up into the North Valleys, up into Spanish Springs, down South Truckee Meadows, more out into Verdi, getting activity going on out there and such. Quick question.
Yes.
Sorry, I don't want to get to the end and not have this up. So we know that we're running out of land. So 2040, if we stay with the land we have, you're not growing in 2040 because there's no land to be grown with. Are you assuming that we find land outside of that, or are you just utilizing the land that we have and a slow growth to that land? That's the only thing I don't understand. Because we'll be out of land way before 20 years, I believe, from what I understand, our land situation is in this region, if we don't get new land out of our federal funds.
Yeah, Dean, Your Honor, for the record, this analysis is based on the TMWA, the Truckee Meadows Service Area boundary. And then also they're going back, a previous water facility plan did a vacant parcel analysis within that TMWA. So this kind of builds out that vacant land within the current area. So this is not accounting for new areas outside of what there is now. So if a big chunk of land came through that lands bill, I mean, we have a general idea of how to do that, but how much, what types of uses are it, what types of uses are there, would revise this. Definitely.
Which also means, Jude, there's an assumption that we have enough land to last to 2040. I'm just saying that this study, that's where my confusion comes a little bit. From my understanding, Reno's running out of land, we're running out of land. I know that.
We're not running out of land.
Maybe it's an assumption that I've heard. So, yeah.
No. Not to meet growth demands. We actually have an oversupply of single family land. And actually, if you look up there in the far north, that yellow, that's Evans Ranch PD and Silverwing. Those were approved in 2005, 2007.
You're talking about towards Stead.
Yeah, I mean, those have been on the books forever, and they haven't materialized. So, we have enough for 2040 because it takes a long haul to bring some of these online.
Because they're so far out.
Yeah,
Okay.
and if Reno's producing just because of economics as much apartment and infill, those are going to be, in the built footprint. That's why, all this, we need more land, we need this, is really just, the lands bill justification is profiteering for private disposal to build more logistics and roads to Tesla,
We're not going to agree on that.
Yeah, I know we're not, so I'm gonna.
Let's stay on the conversation. But my question is so you're making your assessment though based upon land that we do have currently.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And then, so we regionally distributed the bands, and then each planning engineer went into those specific areas based on their more detailed knowledge of the areas and allocated demands appropriately within our system based on where we think the growth is going to actually occur, that segment of growth. Again, this is just demand growth up through 2040 that's being predicted by that projection. Finally, we can actually do the computer modeling at this point, actually start to identify facilities needed. So we got our calibrated model with the existing demands. We allocate spatially and in time. Future demands, perform the system modeling, identify new facilities to continue to meet NEC requirements throughout the TMWA system, and also identify the timing of those facilities. The results of that effort is basically the 20-year capital improvement plan, so it includes facilities for growth, but it also includes other facilities as well as not necessarily associated with growth. And so these are emergency operation, redundancy, power outages, fire events, mitigation of some legacy deficiencies, replacement rehab of major facilities. And so that table there is kind of a summary of the facilities we've identified, cost estimates updated. So you're talking about over a 20-year period, 400 million, and about 200 million of that is associated with growth. So on average, 10 million a year in growth-related facilities. And ultimately, this will be part of the update for the water system facility charge or connection fees as well. So kind of the major takeaways or findings is, our compared to previous water facility plans, our max date demand growth rate has decreased. Most of the CIPs previously identified and haven't significantly changed, have been delayed in time, and the facility plan as well pushed out in time, given that growth isn't occurring as quickly as we anticipated. Areas of growth have not changed significantly. And then some of the major facilities there to kind of summarize, South Truckee, getting more water to South Truckee Meadows, Veri areas associated with more pumps, transmission mains, tanks are needed. Treatment of groundwater in Spanish Springs needed. Consolidation of pump stations into super stations on the west side of Reno, which is basically looking at a variety of older, smaller pump stations in this area and consolidating those into a single station to save long-term costs. Construction of an advanced purified water treatment facility instead, the ore ditch pump station hydroelectric facility.
And then also, just a side note is, since we're pushing out, or demand slowing down, some of the major supply capacity improvements that have identified in the past are not necessarily needed in the current planning period up through 2040. This includes expansion of Chocolate for the Sparks groundwater treatment facility, new facility there, Longley rehab as well. All that can be pushed out in time now. And so the other takeaway, of course, this is a living document. We will update this document on a 5-year period. So if the rate of growth changes, we'll be addressing that, whether we're pushing facilities out further again or bringing them back closer, depending on how quick growth continues to occur and where it occurs. And with that, I'll hand it back to Danny in regards to the WSF update.
So one of the main things going from here that I wanted to have a discussion with you all about and propose this going forward. The main driver of these water system facility charges are increased construction costs. You've seen inflation across the board. We've seen 50 to 100% increases in some of our facilities over the last 2 to 3 years. So that's really what drives trying to make sure we're collecting what we need to do to cover those costs. So what we've looked at and thought about, we know we have a rates discussion, which is a separate discussion. These are fees paid by development. Keeping them separate is that we would go in January and February out to the industry, the builders, NAIOP. We would have another public workshop here for the development community. And then we also go to the SAC, State Advisory Committee, with those updates and calculations. So we spend the next couple of months running the calculations, presenting those. Then we would come back to this board in March for the first reading of those fee. It's actually in the rules that we're revising. April for the second reading with a July 1st implementation date. So that's kind of a 6-month lead up to when the builders would be hearing about the details and staying away from any confusion on rates versus fees. So those are the goals. So, with that, what we would request is that you accept and approve the water facility plan, and then just finalize for direction of staff if you have any differing opinions on that timeline. Updates, and then also just general questions. And again, the staff sitting behind me has done tremendous work in the last year. So good job, guys, and thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can we go back to slide 13? The increased supply of South Truckee Meadows and Bird Eye areas. I'm just curious if we are thinking, because I know Mr. Zimmerman has been working with me, and there's a small water company in Bird Eye that someone, we'll see, this is long-term, may end up servicing. And I know we have some of those other small water companies, and, North Spanish Springs and North Valleys. I'm just curious, do we put those projections as well into this plan, this 20-year plan?
So when we look at each of those areas, we do take that into account for the overall, how much flow, what those pipes and pumps are sized for, and how to get them out there. And it's just a matter of what they cost and how to becomes a dollar.
But we do think about those as part of this calculation approach, even though they're existing development, but we could be servicing.
Yes.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. And the timeline sounds good. I think development has to pay for itself, so we have those conversations.
I think one of my only conversations that I'd like to add, and actually potentially rates and fees because it affects both, but definitely on this, is our maintenance conversation. Because one thing about new things that we need, and I'm encouraged that some of that might get to slow down a little bit with some of what you're projecting. But it seems like over the years we're good because we are just taking care of what's in front of us. There's going to be a day that we're not even in office anymore, and somebody else is going to be sitting here and say, what the heck did they do? Why did we not plan ahead and put together a plan that made sure we had what was needed and these next steps to come? So that is a 6-month window, enough time for us to understand that. how about you say 6 months, that includes you going out, that includes us agreeing to which information you're giving. That's my only question is, there's some information there that I'd like to know, that I understand, and I don't know that I totally do. That's just the maintenance side of it. I get a lot of what you just shared, and and you guys have done a lot of work on that. So can you speak to that?
Yeah, so Danny Rocker for the record, there is a section on asset management contained in the facility plan. It's not a 20-year projection. And by and large, kind of what we've said is each group is managing those facilities and maintenance in a certain way, and that we know we want to get better. We know we want to make sure that the long-term sustainable costs are sustainable. The 6-month time frame is specific to growth-related costs. And so we do have a plan to continually improve at our asset management and say, let's look out longer than we have historically to say, what's the most efficient way to take care of our tanks? What's the most efficient way to take care of our pump stations? Which includes kind of a capital rehab component, but also just preventative maintenance from a staffing. So we do have plans to go forward from here and continue to dial those in. But it would be kind of a separate thing than the water system facility charges that are specific to the growth component of those totals.
I get what you're saying there. I know at large, even in our city, we've learned over and over, the stuff we can maintain will last, and we have to replace it. It's so if we can, I think it's part of the conversation that, and so as we roll out, I'd like to see us really lay out some plan that we're thinking ahead, and instead of waiting to have these big, huge costs come at us that we've laid out, we're going to walk this out. And as a team here, we understand it and are running together. So next year and the years to come, some of those decisions, not that they're concrete, but they're at least in a rubber. We kind of have a guide to lead us into the next stage. Because I don't know that we've had a lot of those conversations since I've been on TMWA. So it's my concern.
One quick follow-up, I'll give you kind of an example. We did an extensive study in about 2015 on our water mains, which is our biggest asset that we own. We've recently kind of done that informal analysis on water tanks. And instead of in a 5-year period, we've gone to about a 10-year CIP, because we know if we recoat those tanks before they get to a certain point, we don't have to repair the rafters for an expensive amount of dollars. And so we have those in various forms throughout the company. They're just not in a high-level summarized place. So I think we could get there in kind of that rubber form, as you say, because I think TMWA has historically done a pretty good job. I think where we're getting behind is that preventative maintenance from a staffing level. We've done capital investments pretty good. We've increased, as long as I've been here, we've increased that tank because we've seen this kind of bubble of tanks needing to be done. So we've done that well. We got to kind of look at it holistically too.
Well, your staff needs to be able to know what that person knows. As soon as you're gone, there better be someone, right? There needs to be someone in place. So thank you.
Yeah. And we'll touch on preventative maintenance a little bit in future goals.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
I think y'all do just tremendous work in utility planning and budgeting. I cannot say enough about how I see this organization approaching it. And it really is just so striking. I know I say this a lot against Reno's sewer operations, which are on an escalator on rates, so there's no need to calibrate against a CIP that tells you how much you need. You just know you're going like this. And then also, I think it was 15 years since we did connection fees up. We just did those. So, in contrast over here, we've got, everything inventory, projections, a whole team really doing it. And it's just tremendous utility planning and management. So I commend you. And also, I was planning staff over at the city of Reno in the 2006 to 2009 era. where Tom was walking in, and I know he was a new public utility, then with, seemed like a water tank every other week, and then you got stranded with some of those. So you learn, but I think you can justify and do good work. I have a few questions. First of all, can one parse out of what you presented to us, what you're estimating for the Bidler, how much Bidler will bring on? Because of course, we have our manager's report here, and we're hanging out with 7,400 acre feet. And I thought that one could go up to 10, actually. So, are you showing that being absorbed in this time period? Or is it in a different document?
Well, I mean, we do have those numbers out there, but I don't think we're absorbing the whole supply.
Okay, so you have a number of where you're going. This is moving pretty slowly, is my point. Huh?
Right. I was just asking to make sure.
Yeah.
We're not absorbing the whole thing in 20 years.
In 20 years, we're not absorbing it. That's a stranded asset. I know it was brought into us by the Washoe County Commission. I have a few things to say about their water management too, but not repeat past. But I don't know. Maybe it's time to rethink the relationship over there. Second is community input. There seems to be a trend sometime to say, well, we're going to go out to these three groups, and they're the development community. Development community is not monolithic, and I'll give you an example. It's probably not going to last forever, but Reno still doesn't have an accessory dwelling unit ordinance, which are granny flats. They should have. They've taken a pass, but it's just hanging out there. Sparks and Washoe County do. In California, 20%, and I'm pretty sure this is good information, my knowledge in the last year is 20% of new units in California have been ADUs. So you're going out not to people pay to be builders and have lobbyists or NAOP or so on. You're going out to mom and pops, people like me who want one in my backyard. So let's do that. Let's put them in on our input consideration on the rate structures, because they do want to build in Southwest Reno, and they want to know what those costs are going to be. And in California, where they've gone so aggressive to require those, some jurisdictions are having a hard time knowing how the rules play out in terms of hookup fees and so on, separate lines. So let's start by having our input be other people up. Development's going to come on in this new form, because it will. That's where people want to go, and Reno cannot hold off the accessory dwelling units forever. That's just my point. And then the satellite systems do have a lot of mention in here, I think, these 5 satellite systems, right? I think mentioned here. And I think we need to talk about those at some point. Because I was the biggest proponent of buying the Boomtown one, because the Reno City Council made subdivision findings that they had the water for it. But I'm sorry, in the city of Reno, you're not putting new subdivisions onto privately owned satellite systems. So, we kind of brought over here my colleagues who were with me at the time to buy that. But I know it came to a cost to the organization. And I think that if we are eyeing these 5 satellite systems, we need to go over to Washoe County and say, well, we've seen this play out 3 times already, Washoe County. So we want you to put a little curve on these satellite systems so you're not exacerbating defective systems until we, get you on the path of acquisition.
That gives it some things to think about. I think some of that's a whole other conversation.
But are the satellite systems calculated in as acquisition in this document?
So these satellite systems are the ones we already have.
Okay, they're only 5.
Yeah, Lenny W, Truckee Canyon, Stamp Mill, Old Washoe.
Are they wheeling agreements, or do we own them lock, stock, and barrel?
We own them. They came over from the county.
Oh, they were the ones that came from the county. Okay, without a treasury, like Stimbian.
I don't know the details.
So, thank you. I know you threw a lot.
Okay, I know.
The one thing I would say though, in any jurisdictional thing, and this, I don't believe there's a lot of work to be done if a jurisdiction is not actually actively using that. So I think be careful of that. I think as a board, if we ever change our mind on that, that's a whole big conversation we need to have. But I think on our staff level, if that's not what Reno's doing right now, or Sparks was not doing that, that's appropriate. With that said, is there anything else on this that needs to be shared? I know a lot was thrown on the table, so you good? Good, okay. Let's go ahead and look for a motion on this.
I'll move to approve the TMWA 2020-2024 or 2040 rather water system facility plan update dated October 2023.
Thank you. Have a first. Can I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passed unanimously. Thank you very much. Thank you for your team. And thank you for all your hard work. I know we have no idea how much you guys have really dreamt about this. But thank you.
Ready for a break.
Thank you. So we're moving on to number 12. Presentation of TMWA goals and objectives results for fiscal year 2023. John Zimmerman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So these are TMWA goal results. So last month, we presented general manager goals and goal results. This month, we're going to talk about the organizational goal results first, and organizational goals for next year, starting now. We usually walk through this, and some of you will walk us through it. There'll be a few times where we kind of stop off and have a few deeper dives in certain areas, but for the most part, stop us if you have any questions. Jump into it.
Good morning, Sonia Colson for the record. What's I'm going to talk about on the presentation is in your packet. This is just in a easier to view format. For clarification, legend, completed on target will be noted in green, in progress, almost met will be noted in yellow, and not met will be in red. The organizational level goals and objectives are, first you have here customer satisfaction. Robert touched on number 1, 84% due to the changes of going from phone survey to email survey, a different format, but I noted it in green since it's still pretty high. So, and then number 3, we don't have a target for this one because it is as projects or programs come along in the community where we can provide support. In this case, we had 2 this past year. The John Champion Portland Loop grand opening along the Truckee River happened, as well as the approval of the Reno City Plaza Portland Loop along the Truckee River, both under one Truckee River Fund. Efficiency objectives, we knocked these out of the park again. If you have any questions about that, we have Will Raymond and staff to talk about that. Number 1, this just shows how lean TMWA operates with the number of employees per number of customer accounts per employee. And I'll
Next agenda. Next.
So little backtrack for member Vibey and members Reese and Hill. I think this is your second strategic planning session. We follow the TMWA benchmarking survey. This is a national survey that happens every year, and we use the standards to measure TMWA's operations against, except for safety. Safety is a different industry standard. This one we use, as you can see, the labor statistics for goal 1 and the track collisions per mile for goal 2. It's a separate industry standard. Number 2, we did not meet this year, and the explanation is there. According to the number of miles driven, we had that many accidents, and it was 8 minor accidents, which we noted no one was severely injured, and they were back to work the next day. Finance, we met objectives 1 through 5. Numbers 6 and 7. The notes are on the next slide. Do you want to speak to these? Thank you.
Yep. So it shouldn't be a surprise. Number 6, that's our debt service coverage ratio. So as a reminder, that's net revenues as a percentage of total debt service. In fiscal 2023, we got hit on both ends. We got hit with inflation, specifically electric power and water treatment chemical costs. We did a budget augmentation in the third quarter of the fiscal year last year, close to $5 million for those two items. We ended the year right on what that budget augmentation was, slightly under, which was the goal. And then in the fourth quarter of the fiscal year, we had a close to $6 million revenue shortfall because of the good weather. So we got hit on both sides there, and that directly affected our debt service coverage ratio. Going forward, I want to touch on that too, because of the inflation costs, and I've talked about this at the last couple of meetings. I don't know if you weren't there, but our debt service coverage ratio projected for fiscal 24 and 25 is still going to be slightly under 1.5 times without use of rate stabilization funds. So we use rate stabilization fund and we get to the 1.5. But because of that really the rapid increase on the electric power costs, which there's talk that those may come down. I don't know. We're not planning for that. But along with the rate plan that we proposed and has been tentatively approved by the board, preliminarily approved, we'll get back to 1.5 within 3 years. And so I feel okay about that. But I just wanted to point out that ratio is going to potentially be under 1.5 times for the next couple of years because we just can't swing the pendulum that quickly. And then the last one is really the same thing. That's a measure of basically our overall net income, and so that was lower for the fiscal year.
Matt, for the record, too, wasn't that our decision we made when we set the budget? No, we.
Yep.
Just said.
Yep, exactly.
I just want to point out it's not something you did; it's something we did. I think it's, you can blame us. It's okay. But I think it's important we know that. Well, it's important you know that. It was our decision, not yours.
Yep.
Yeah. So if someone comes back and says, "I can't believe you did it," that was our risk.
Yep.
These are the calculations and the explanations Matt just went over. And then the natural resources objectives. These have been the standing objectives that we've carried over the years, except for the new one that was introduced last year and the board approved, the Palomino feasibility study. Everything is explained in the next slide or in the next page in the packet. Mr. Enlow noted this objective 5 as 80% since it was just introduced last year and there was a lot of work that was done, but there still needs a lot of work to be done moving forward.
For number 2, we'll have John Enlow and Lauren Jones come up and just kind of do a quick PowerPoint.
Right now?
Yeah.
Okay. So bear with me, I gotta switch screens down.
Okay. We're gonna go ahead and do this, and then we'll take a quick minute to have your lunch, and then we'll come back and keep working on our meeting. Okay. I know we don't want to be here all day, but few is good.
This is going to be very quick.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Lauren. I'm Lauren Jones for the record. I'm a hydrogeologist here. And I'm just going to give you a super quick update on TMWA's Aquifer Storage and Recovery Program, also known as ASR. Okay, so first off, I'm going to give you relevant current operations and ASR strategies that we use. And for TMWA, it's really important for us to maximize our resources. And one way that we do this is through conjunctive use, where we maximize the surface water. We try to use as much surface water as possible instead of groundwater in order to let the wells rest when we can, and then let those groundwater levels naturally recover through passive recharge. And this is really important for us in places like Mount Rospan, where prior to the merge with Washoe County, that system solely relied on groundwater pumping, and we had a lot of declines in groundwater elevations. The water levels are were drawn down quite a bit. And then now, since the merge, TMWA has built infrastructure in order to push Truckee River water and now Mount Rose water, which is through Whites Creek. And so anytime that there's surface water going up to the hill, that means that we're not using the wells, or sometimes we're not using the wells and we're allowing those groundwater levels to recover naturally through that passive recharge. And this has been like just monumental for us as far as the water level recovery, and things are starting to look a lot better up there. So Mount Rose treatment plant and the Truckee River water really helped up there. Another way that we maximize our resources is through active injection, where we take surface water and we inject it down wells that are feasible and appropriate at the time. So we do have a lot of wells in our system that we can recharge into, but not all of them make sense to recharge all the time. Some of them have really steady groundwater elevation. Some of them just don't need the water, or depending on their location in the area. So we really try to look at where does this actually need to occur? Where's the best place to put water? So we focus on areas that have declining water levels. That's places like the Mount Rose Fan, like what I discussed before, Spanish Springs, a handful of wells in other basins. Those are the huge target areas for that. And then we try to recharge in areas that have undesirable water quality. So this is just for a handful of wells. Like, let's say if there's an arsenic issue, we'll recharge in that well, or something near a plume or something like that. There aren't very many of them, but we do utilize ASR in that way. And then when we do want to store water or add to the recharge volume in any way, we try to pick wells that have the room to put it in and that are also mechanically feasible. Not all of our wells are as easy to get water in the ground as, they're all not the same. So we try to choose something that makes sense, that doesn't need a ton of babysitting, that is easily mechanically, and then we also don't want to do anything to compromise water quality or significant losses from the Truckee River. So we try not to recharge lately near the river corridor or anything like that. So those are kind of our main points that we try to target now with our ASR strategies. So just to touch on some of the passive recharge stuff, particularly in the Mount Rose Fan, this is total pumping in acre feet on which includes all the South Truckee Meadows wells and Pleasant Valley, so up on that fan, just to show how little pumping we are doing now compared to what we were doing pre-merge. When we were pumping close to 6,000 acre feet, or not we, but the county at the time. And then since we've built the infrastructure to push Truckee River water and now Whites Creek water, we're really able to reduce that pumping, and all of that directly corresponds to naturally improving those water levels through passive recharge. Okay. And then here's a chart of just our total volume that we've recharged since the inception of ASR in 1993. And so far we've recharged up to 41,000 acre feet as of the end of this recharge season. And this is separated by year. Each bar shows how much we recharged in that year, and then each color represents the hydrographic basin where we recharge that water. So what you might notice first is that prior to 2008, we only recharged into the central Truckee Meadows and West Lemon Valley. And then since 2008, we've also been able to recharge into the Spanish Springs Valley, and then now more recently into South Truckee Meadows and also Pleasant Valley. So we do recharge into 5 distinct hydrographic basins when we can. And then the other thing that you'll notice here is we used to recharge a lot more water post 2016. And there are 2 primary differences for that. One is being that we kind of restructured our priorities for ASR. Instead of just recharging into whatever wells we could get water into, we looked at where do we actually need to, given the water year or the resource itself. So we stopped recharging in wells that just simply didn't need it, that had shallow groundwater levels, that were more difficult to put water in the ground. And then the second reason is our point of compliance for disinfection byproducts changed. ASR is regulated through the Underground Injection Control Program through Nevada Division of Environmental Protection. And we used to have to sample just within the distribution system based on a running annual average. And then now, post 2016, the permit is regulating us to sample at the actual wellhead itself. So each well, water going in and water coming out of any well that is recharged. So because this was new to TMWA, we didn't know what everything looked like. So we just kind of took a pause and really investigated the disinfection byproducts within our system. We looked at possible mitigation strategies if we needed them. And then now you'll see in 2022 and 2023, we started kind of revamping and starting to recharge more, but still selectively picking where we wanted to recharge. So for the future, we have an overall goal is to recharge up to 9,000 acre feet a year. And in order to do this goal, many things will have to occur. We'll have to make a lot of mechanical upgrades at specific well sites. So we have a lot of wells we can recharge in, but a lot of the wells that we want to recharge in, we simply just can't do it yet. And these are a lot of wells like on the Mount Rose Fan. We need to make physical changes to the well itself, either valving or distribution system changes to make it possible to actually do this. We might add in some disinfection byproduct mitigation at specific well sites if we need it. we're gonna have to amend our current permits through NDEF and Nevada Division of Water Resources to include more wells or to change things up a little bit. So we will have to change things there. And then Mount Rose will need to stay operational, and that'll serve as active and passive recharge, which is really important for us. And then also the American Flat Advanced Purified Water Facility will have to be in effect. So how that'll look broken down is we will want to recharge around 3,000 acre feet a year into the South Truckee Meadows and Pleasant Valley area. And that source is going to be Truckee River water and Woods Creek water. And then about 4,000 acre feet into the Central Truckee Meadows and Spanish Springs Valley. And that's going to be solely Truckee River water. And then in Lemon Valley, we'll try and put in 2,000 acre feet, and that's going to be through that Advanced Purified Water Facility. So that is our goal, and that's just a quick overview of what we're doing right now. Any questions?
Very good. We're going to just go ahead and answer if there's any questions for this piece of it, and then we'll take a little break and get our food. But if there's any questions, I think it's a lot of good information right there.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lauren. Yeah, we wanted to, have you hear from the experts. It just shows the benefit of regional water management, and it really keys up on that passive recharge, which is just a huge component of that program. We'll continue with the natural resource goals.
Okay.
And I think the next one to talk about, John Emlo, just a quick update on Palomino feasibility study.
Right. Working with our regional partners, we did a lot of work on Palomino in 2021, 2022, and this year. We basically have been on a pause with that, working with the tribe on addressing return flow issues for reclaimed water use from TMWA. And so that's really the reason that project has not moved forward, because we want to satisfy the tribe's concerns as well as the federal water master and the state engineer. And those discussions are actually going very well. We reached an agreement with the tribe on the big question with accounting. How do we account for return flow? And we've reached basically an agreement with them. They understand what we're doing and agree with it and so forth. And that's been implemented with the water master. And so now the discussions are focused on the tri-gid reclaimed water use, trying to get that buttoned up so they can start taking water here this next year. And so once tri-gid and Palomino really have very similar types of return flow issues because we've taken it out of the system. And so there's additional return flow requirements that we have to satisfy. And I think we're feeling very positive about that effort. And so assuming we come to an agreement with the tribe on that as well, I would envision Palomino, the efforts on that starting.
Any questions on
Anything
that?
else? That's it? Okay. Any questions on any of these? Yes.
Yeah, so Palomino is TMWA water being re-injected, proposed.
Actually, no, it's TMWA water being recharged. So just like Lauren talked about recharging the aquifer with TMWA potable water, there's actually over 40,000 acre feet of storage capacity in that area. So the reason we're interested in that is like another Boca reservoir.
Okay.
So this is a long-term off-river storage improvement for TMWA. TMWA is interested in it because the other concept is irrigating the farm with treated effluent and allowing their groundwater wells to rest too. So that would also facilitate kind of that water storage bank. And there's a potential for a small amount of water resources that could be available to TMWA, say in Spanish Springs, to serve development in the future. So the big benefit to TMWA is basically 2,500 acre feet of irrigation reclaimed water use, keeping it out of the river.
But the majority of it will be then a TMWA pipe off the river and then moving up and
Two pipes.
Two pipes.
Two pipes, potable water pipe, reclaimed water pipe.
Okay, and will the PFAS regulations all be in place by then, and then we'll know what we're re-injecting and be?
Yeah, so the PFAS regulations are in place. 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 So the PFA Yeah, well, we,
at that point.
again, what we would inject would be was potable water, so it will be in compliance with
Yeah.
any PFAS regulation and anything else. You know, what we need to be more cognizant of is irrigating too much out there with the reclaimed
Yeah.
water. Because like in Spanish Springs, you could leach nitrates from the soil if you irrigate too much. So we've been doing a lot of that kind of work this last year, where we've been talking with the tribe, and so I think it's very feasible. But Tumwarp has their own challenges with the draft permit, and so it kind of remains to be seen where that goes and how Palomino fits into their future plans.
Beth? I think the one thing you talked about a little bit too is there's a timing on this, because once we get that in the ground, you'll have to start using it somewhat within a few years, right?
That's actually American flag.
American flag.
Where you put water in, you need to start taking water out within about 5 years. Palomino is a different story.
Okay.
There's a big hole in the ground. It would take us 20 years to fill it up.
Okay.
But like I said, TMWA is interested in it as that water banking. Really, that's the big value to TMWA, having that off-river water for emergency use. Who knows what potential uses in the future, but when you could have, you're not going to build any other water supply reservoirs on the Truckee River system, and having an underground Boca reservoir that doesn't evaporate and it's there for future use is a big benefit.
Well, I think, for me, I think, and we've all talked a lot about this is the idea of us walking into TMWA on this board, and people before us did an incredible job of making sure that we had what we needed for our time. And so I think that is definitely investment in the future for the generations. So that's great.
Exactly.
Well, everybody, if there's no more questions, we're gonna go ahead and take a break in the sense to get some food, and once we kind of know everyone gets food, we'll come right back in. So 5-10 minutes, real long. Okay, keep it working on. Yeah. Very good. Just to remind you, we are still on discussion.
Turn out the meeting.
I already.
Well, they were still talking.
Andy's my bouncer. We're still on discussion 12, presentation of TMWA goals and objectives, results for fiscal year 2023. Back to you, John. Or back to you.
Oh, thank you. All right. So we went over objective 2, Lauren's presentation. Mr. Enlow provided your background on number 5. And then, there we go. And then these next couple of slides are just the narrative explaining how staff got to, achieve the goals for the fiscal year 23. Last year, there was discussion on objective 2 to incorporate a recharge goal, and that explanation is here. Mr. Enlow talked about that as well, and Lauren, sorry. All right, and now we're in the department goals. First up is treatment. And these goals are established at the beginning of the fiscal year. And last year, this past fiscal year, the treatment goals ranged from 28,000 mg with 3 bands up to 30,000 mg, with the cost for each category established at the beginning of the fiscal year. Now, the note at the bottom explains why we did not meet that particular goal. First off was the wet weather in the winter and spring, as well as the increased power and chemical costs that occurred during the fiscal year related to inflation. Does anybody have any questions related to that? Okay. Sorry, I should also note that we, as always, goals 2 and 3 were met and exceeded by with 0 number of MCL violations and 100% of less than 0.1 NTUs in our finished turbidity. Distribution goals. This is related to planned and unplanned maintenance. They're broken down into 2 sections of less than 4 hours or between 4 and 12 hours, which means that that particular line or pipe is down for maintenance. And the unplanned as well, and we met those goals, even though we had that unplanned break in Montreux. And our team worked diligently to bring those customers back online, so we kept us in the green. Operations goal, the highlighted yellow means that these goals were amended last year. So in FY22, the backflow retrofits were 175. We did not meet that goal last year because for whatever reason, but our standard has been 150. So in the past few years, we exceeded that goal. As you can see, this year we did. And the one time we increased the goal target to 175, we did not meet that, so we brought it back down to 150. It's always nice to be over that. And then we amended the target for number 3, and as you can see, we exceeded that. Even though we said remaining field, convert 8 of the remaining field sites, this appears to be an ongoing, this will be an ongoing goal, and we'll talk about that at the next item. Business information systems objectives and goals were met except for number 2, increased number of help desk tickets. As you can see in the notes, we had 3,356 total, averaging 279 per month. Going back to being a lean company, the IT team worked very hard to meet the 48-hour goal to respond to and close out the tickets. And then, as you can see, there is going to be another project underway to improve the help desk system. Any questions? Okay, and then the new goals that were introduced last year were met, as well as continuing to be underway. So 4 through 6 were to introduce these new projects, And with any IT project, it takes some time to implement and make sure that the new system, the bugs in the new system are worked out before they go live. Customer service. We almost met the goal of number one of answering phones and handling times of less than 5 minutes. We were 11 seconds over on average, so I just kept that a yellow. I really wanted to do that a green, but sticking with protocol. Number 6 was a little typo. It should say 11%, not 0.11%. That was my my error. So it was almost met.
Question for you.
Yes.
Why do we do 5 minutes? Is that just standard protocol for whoever? Did someone come up with it and just say it's a good idea?
We just said that. I don't think it's a standard. It's not. It's just our
goal.
Our goal, and seeing how, you know, the volume of calls coming in, the time it takes, and then it's evaluated. Yeah. All right. Oops. And then these are the calculations for goals 5 and 8. Human resources goal, we have met 1 and 2. As one of Mr. Zimmerman's goals is to support staff with continuing education, professional development. Number 1 has exceeded the 75th percentile, and our target is median or better. And then number 3 is our number of FTEs that are eligible for retirement. We have quite a few employees who are eligible for retirement. As you can see, 67. So we are in the red on that one, according to the TMWA benchmark survey results.
And so that's a big reason for the succession planning and employee development effort, because that that figure, talking with Jessica Atkinson, it's pretty accurate. It's 27% is a very high number, so we've got a lot of work to continue to do.
All right, financials. Mr. Bowman? Oh, no, okay, I'll keep going. Number 1, we have $35.9 million underspent for capital commitments. Number 2, $1.5 million underspent for O&M budget commitments. We try to be very conservative with our CIP and budget and fall under that and not exceed it, so we don't come back to you for a budget augmentation. Number 3, our lean operating ratio, and for some reason I cannot, there we go. Our target was median, 52%. We are in the we have 70% of lean operating ratio. Mr. Bowman explained the reason for that. Again, going back to the wet spring, cool weather, and not having and a $6 million shortfall in the third quarter or fourth quarter of the fiscal year. So we are fingers crossed and expecting that to go back to the median, which has always been the case.
Yeah, last year that one was 57%.
Okay. Natural resources goal. We are very present in the community. I skipped over one of the goals in customer service with 67 presentations in the community and workshops and classrooms. In this case, 21 of those were related to TROA and water supply and A+ reclaimed water feasibility. And all the other goals we far exceeded the targets. Turnaround times for water rights applications, as well as water usage audit requests, which falls under conservation.
On number 7, I think it was Member Hill a few years ago that added the best available science today with global climate change models. So we'll have Mr. Houck come up and just talk briefly about how we'll address that as we kick off the next water resource plan update.
Thanks, John. Yeah, so in the coming months, we'll begin the process of updating the next water resource plan, just updated every 5 years for the 2025-2045 water resource plan. Board will have an opportunity to review and comment along the way. It'll be a year-long plus process. As part of that revamp of the water resource plan, we will be revisiting climate change, that section. To the best of my ability, best of my recollection, there hasn't really been any new developments on the climate change in the last 5 years since our last water resource plan. One notable thing is that some of the climate change experts from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change have begun backing off on some of the more extreme projections. They don't have as much confidence in those anymore. So, and look into the future with climate change, that's more scenario-based planning to the future. As part of this water resource plan, we're actually going to be looking to the past. We're going to be looking at some Paleolithic hydrology going back even 1,000 years to look at historical Truckee River flows and historical droughts, because I think the past can help us plan for the future.
Sounds like a movie I've seen.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. And then since the targets and the results are just a blanket 100%, we have the explanations for how we got there and what staff completed. And then engineering and new business, number 2 is highlighted because of the new projects that were listed in this goal, and the target was $23.45 million. They met or underspent by almost $10 million. And the turnaround time for new business projects were met or exceeded. And then again, we have 4 new goals here that talked about the digital plan platform. Mr. Chair. Met that 100%. New business process mapping was identified, and then the update on the water facility plan that was just provided to you.
And before we move on, we'll have Mr. Rotter talk a little bit about number 2, which is some of the projects.
Yeah, so you'll notice the results were $10 million, and the goal was to spend 23. We're always in between this, getting enough done and not overspending our budgets. But specifically, American Flat, I wanted to give an update on that. We had a goal for the 30% estimate in April of 2023, and we didn't quite hit that. We had our final design handoff from Reno to Tumwa this May. Our 30% GMP estimate came in July. We had a value engineering workshop in September where we kind of reconciled some of the cost estimates and looked at ground truthing the schedule with the contractor and looking at, hey, if we push it into 2 years, or if we lengthen it 6 months, what do those costs look like? Also, the 30% plans went to NDEP in August, and we'll be reviewing those within here in November. So a little bit more detail here. I want to talk about the costs, the funding, the schedule, and some public outreach with Mr. Enlow. The cost has increased. Like all of our other capital projects, it's gone up. The current cost estimate through 3 different ways we looked at is $220 million versus about $120 million from before. And there's a number of reasons for that. 1, just general cost escalation. 2, we've added in PFAS removal. We had a plan that might be part of it, but now it is part of it. We've added the Public Education Center at the APWF facility to showcase this technology and really make sure the community understands it and sees it and has their hands on it. A number of the assumptions in the basis of design report as we got into reality didn't make sense. For instance, one example was some of the treatment processes at Risworth didn't have a building. They were outside. As you look at it, those facilities need to be conditioned. They can't live through the cold. You need a building. So there's some stuff like that occurred as well. As far as the funding goes, for TMWA, we have the same plan for the TMWA capital. So the funding, our 30% of the total. We're still on track for that capital plan. We have a Bureau of Reclamation grant that came out that we're hoping to get $30 million or more. That goes for a December submittal. So that's a big one we've been tracking, and we've already been through their feasibility plan. We've already submitted once, and they like our project, so we're for that. And then we also got a $3 million EPA community fund grant that can fund some of this design process. Schedule-wise, we're looking at 60% design in January of 2024. That might tweak a little bit depending on our discussion with NDP and that initial plan review and how long it takes to kind of tweak whatever their input is. Our goal right now is the final GNP about a year from now, which would include some of the procurement. We're still seeing lead times for transformers and electrical meter a year out. And so some of that will come then, but breaking ground in spring of 25 with shovels in the dirt. And then from there, the completion of construction is looking like fall of 2027. And then from there, we've got conditional things we're putting on ourselves and including in the permit with NDP that we will irrigate with the water to start to prove it up to technology. Then we will inject it into the ground, pull it back out and irrigate to prove to ourselves that we can get it out without having issues. And then after that is when it would go to the system, meeting all A+ requirements and all of the permits of our conditions of our permit. And then Mr. Enlow, can you talk a little bit about our public outreach to date?
Sure. I think working with the city of Reno very closely actually on this, I think we've really gone above and beyond on reaching out to the public and informing them about this project up in the North Valleys. We sent out over 12,000 invitations, not only to TMWA customers, but to domestic well owners as well. We actually held 2 public information meetings at the terminal building at the Reno State Airport. And those were, I'll say, reasonably well attended. It's interesting, the majority of the questions and concerns we're getting are from domestic well owners, not so much customers of our water system. More concerned about, is this recharge we're going to do, is it going to affect their well? Is it going to impact their septic system? That type of thing. I can say that those meetings have probably been some of the most well-received, positive public meetings I've been involved with for a long time. I mean, you get people coming in really not understanding what it is exactly that we're doing, but we had subject matter experts there in hydrogeology and public outreach and water quality and the processes and finance and so forth. And after they spent time with us, I think they really honestly appreciated what we're doing because they see it as really an investment in our water future. So we've been pleasantly surprised by the positive public reception of the whole thing. I don't know if any of you saw, Lydia and I were actually on Face the State this last weekend, and I think that was a good kind of lay person's discussion of the whole project that, based on what I'm hearing, has been well received. Lydia was also interviewed back in August, and that interview was put on NPR, and so really got a lot of good attention. Ariana Bennett posted something on her Facebook page, and I think Robert sent it to Orange County and the groundwater replenishment system down there. They posted it on their webpage and everything too, because so they're excited to see TMWA and Reno promoting advanced purified water up here. So very positive reception thus far. We have another public meeting on November 16th, which is for the actual permit compliance that we're required to do by regulation. And so we'll be out there at the terminal building again. And this is a public meeting where we need to respond to everyone's questions and comments in writing and provide that to NDEP as part of the permit application that we're targeting kind of the April timeframe when we submit everything to NDEP. Wanted to also touch on, we met with Northern Nevada Public Health staff a couple of times and have talked with them about that. Earlier, the WRWC, Kim Riggin mentioned that she's trying to coordinate a tour for some of the Board of Health members and others to let them have the same opportunity that many of you have had, going down and seeing those facilities and learning more about it. I think we'll do kind of an informational presentation to the Board of Health in December, and then probably January, February timeframe, go in front of the Board of Health looking for a letter of support, which will be really, I think, geared similarly to the NDEP permit that Danny discussed, these conditional steps that we have to follow before we ultimately receive the final A+ permit. So a ton of activity going on the public outreach side. And like I said, it's been surprisingly supportive and positive thus far.
Any questions? Yes.
Yeah, thank you for the update. I appreciate it. We haven't added this in front of us at the Reno City Council in some time, but kind of as an aside, and there might be something in my inbox, but we did hear that the schedule moved back to 28. So the $220 million cost estimate, that's in total, correct?
Total.
So TMWA carries 30% and Reno carries 70% of that. Correct. That's how our current agreements work. And then the grant funds that you've received, are those going to cover TMWA's costs, or are they also going to be split over the full cost?
Per the ILA, any grant funding is split 70-30.
Oh, okay. So those do go into
same portion.
Buying down Reno's costs too. Yeah. Well, thank you.
I'm excited to go and see what's happening. Thank you for including our Nevada Public Health. And I think as we walk this out, we'll take steps to go. The one thing that is important to know is that what we have here will continue to walk forward. There'll be a point in time where we get to make a full decision to say, this is 100% go, let's move forward. And we're still, in a sense, working hard after it. We're all seem pleased with it. At the same time, the full design will come in front of us and we will have some final say before everything pops forward. So be aware of that.
Yeah, the 2 points I forgot is one, we'll be back with an update sometime early spring, similar kind of update as far as, hey, where are we at, what's the schedule, what's the cost look like, ahead of that final GMP, which would go in front of Reno Council and TMWA Board for final, hey, we're ready to go, here's what it looks like, let's go. So before the decision is made, there'll be another update.
But you said the financing plan includes this TMWA obligation in there. Does it back out water sales? Because I know that was a big part of the early discussion. And does that calculate water sales?
Water sales are a portion of TMWA's funding strategy for the county.
Water rights sales.
Sorry.
Water rights sales.
Yeah, when we get there, I'd like to learn more about that, because who's gonna buy those water rights? We've got Bidler water rights hanging out there, right? So what?
If I could address that, I mean, what we've talked about internally, we haven't really zeroed in on anything, but we've had discussions is pricing them the same as Bidler water and maybe doing a 3-to-1. If somebody has a 4 acre foot demand, let's say, it would be kind of transparent to them. They wouldn't know they're buying 4 acre feet of demand, 3 acre feet of that. The revenue from that would go to Bidler, 1 would go to kind of the TMWA Reno bucket, and then get divvied up 60-40. That's what we're thinking about, and we'll obviously bring that back to the TMWA board for consideration and approval. We have had discussions with representatives of Bidler Water Company, and they understand the need that they need this project too in order for them to sell their water. There needs to be an effluent management plan to to deal with it. So I'll say they don't necessarily like it, but they understand.
I think it should be a bigger discussion, really, because we already heard earlier, that water's not to be absorbed in a 20-year time frame. So, it should be a bigger discussion of inlet water. Maybe it bypasses Washoe County and heads over to Story County so that they can fill housing obligations that they're, not meeting and impacting our region.
I mean, I'm not trying to argue with you, but I just want to point out that resource is a huge resource for this community as far as providing water rights to be able to supply the community. I mean, we've been running that Fish Springs water system for the last 3 or 4 years now, providing 3,000 to 4,000 acre feet of water into the North Valleys, not sending Truckee River water up there, resting wells and so forth. We're also contemplating allowing some of that water to be sold throughout the Truckee Meadows to extend our Truckee River water rights. So there's a benefit there too. Midler would have to accept a lower price per acre foot to be able to do that. So we're in discussions with them to see if that's something that they would consider, but it's higher price per acre foot, longer period of time versus lower price per acre foot and sell more faster. So that's kind of the trade-off. And so initial conversations with them, they've said they're open to that idea and want to have further discussions.
Landlord is, or condemn it and let it go through the condemnation process to put the price on.
Thank you for the update. This is not an agenda item to vote on, it's just bring it forward. With that said, we're going to go ahead and move on to our item 13 discussion. I'm sorry, actually number 14. Discussion, no, 13. Discussion, action, and possible direction to staff of the proposed TMWA goals and objectives for fiscal year 2024. I do want to say our goal is to be out of here by 1:30. I know we need to take a quorum, and so if we can do that, that would be wonderful. I know you laugh. I understand the laugh.
No, I think it was good. It was good. It's fun.
And so again, so these are goals for this year, organizational. Please stop us if you have any questions or want to add to it. And like last time, we'll have Ms. Wilson walk us through it.
So the goals that follow industry standards, either AWWA or other industry standards, those are blanketed, updated, and included in your packet, but for the purposes of the presentation, I've only added significant changes or new goals to present. So the business information system department goals, they've added 2. Number 5, to complete the human capital management or HCM project, as it's known internally, that will replace the current payroll and HR applications. The target is to be completed by August of 2024, and then also to implement CityWorks Public Access Portal to be completed next year. And then engineering goals or new business, we have implement the CityWorks Public Access Portal here as well. So it's dual, one for engineering, one for IT, and then implement 3 new business process improvements, and to implement the updated facility charges from the water facility plan. And that's all I have for new goals, and everything else included in the proposed FY24 goals and objectives are just updated measures, targets, medians, etc.
And then one goal to talk about, and I'll have Danny talk a little bit about it. It's on page 1 of your packet. It's the overall efficiency goals for the national benchmark. I just wanted Danny to talk about what types of utilities are we compared against? How are we a little bit different?
Yeah, so Danny Roder for the record. One of the things as we started looking at this goal, some questions came up actually. It was in member Andriola that brought it up. Somebody else during our rates discussion, but related to kind of maintenance, related to efficiencies and how we do things. We've hit that top tier for a number of years. As we started looking at it, I wanted to know, why is this so, gospel truth? And so we started looking at it. It's 35 water utilities across the country, really what it is, that are about similar to our size, 100 to 400,000 populations. And so that's a good starting point, but I don't think we need to keep it as a hard and fast rule, because one, I looked at all the names on that list. They're nowhere near as complex as our terrain and our situation is. They don't have hydroelectric. And so there's not quite a great apples to apples in there. We talked a little bit about last time, as far as Las Vegas, they have a similar elevation change difference, but they have one source of supply, and they have like a quarter of the pump stations that we have. So it's just kind of that bigger grid system that they have. And so when you kind of compare that, it's like, okay, well, if you look at number of accounts per number of FTEs, you might be comparable, but yet we have 4 times the amount of pump stations that they have to take care of and do preventive maintenance and those sorts of things. So just wanted to provide some context to that, so that when we see those and we say, yep, we're meeting them, yep, we're meeting them, it's something to take a look at and make sure what are we truly trying to do here? What are our other goals?
And the other piece of it, I asked Will Raymond to just talk about more. We talked about in past board meetings about refocusing on the core of our operations and doing more preventative maintenance. And I wanted Mr. Raymond here just to kind of talk a little bit about his goals within operation.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate the discussion. Will Raymond, Director of Operations and Water Quality. I think a lot of the stuff that Danny's already hit on with construction and new facilities, everything he builds, we have to maintain. And we've got facilities that are rather old, that require routine maintenance. And really, when you look at Choctaw, for example, it may be one location, but there are probably 500 different yearly preventive maintenance tasks that need to be done. And what Danny already started to talk about was the complexity of our distribution system. We see a lot of the numbers about the number of tanks, number of wells, number of booster pump stations, but you start to add in pressure regulating stations, essentially just something a mechanic has to go out there. And when I say a certified mechanic, I don't mean their title, that they have to be certified with NDEP. They're going out there. And so when you have this preventive maintenance approach, I mean, you add in another 400 pressure regulating valves that you have to maintain. And it's just like tuning up a carburetor or tuning up, cleaning an orifice out, setting the balances so the pressure is maintained and sustained and operate as they're supposed to. And the more we get a site visit and do preventive maintenance, we don't want to put ourselves in a position that we're now leaning on reactive maintenance. It's so much easier getting those eyes on to kind of say, yeah, let's get in ahead of it, or we have an issue, we see something coming, so let's build up a redundancy plan with engineering, build up how to operate the system, because that's not me. In the operations realm, especially in the summertime, we're kind of in a catch-22. In the middle of summertime, when we're having to produce 145 million gallons of water every day to our customers. In the middle of wintertime, it might be about 45. And it's easier for the treatment and operation side because they're not so stressed in the middle of fighting thunderstorms and dirty water. And that's when tank rehab projects come in and you have that window to do maintenance. But that's when the maintenance staff now is their busy season, because they need to be able to do all this preventive maintenance work based on criticality. And even if for some reason I had a magic wand and you got 50 more certified mechanics with these certifications, it still wouldn't work that way. Like the board says, make it happen. It's a process, because I think I saw on those slides that the number of employees looking to retire or in that retirement eligibility range. Somebody wins the lottery, somebody has a life-changing family event and they're no longer working here. It takes time for us to get ready. Our internal apprenticeship programs, I'm an operations side, we also have one on the distribution side, but they range anywhere from a 2-year to 4-year apprenticeship before you really would trust them as a certified distribution operator to do this preventive maintenance work. So I think it's important to realize as this stage and as Danny started talking about the level of complexity, trying to find a process where we start to increase that preventive maintenance approach and lean on that core operations perspective so that we're not faced with those critical, oh my God, issues. We got to jump on it. Get them done earlier, do as many tune-ups as you can, keep things ready to go, and get the staff prepared to recycle that the next year. And that's that.
This lends a lot to our conversation that we started on the last point of just making sure that we're ready for the maintenance portion. So how long does it typically take to get a certificate? You said apprentice is a couple of years, so it's a process.
It's absolutely a process, and every apprentice is a little bit different because some of them go a little bit faster, but once you become a certified distribution operator, it's really that skill set where you have exams you top out, you're able to demonstrate that you can do a preventive maintenance that here, John, you're now a certified mechanic, you're gonna go do this preventive maintenance at this certain distribution station. It could range anywhere from 2 years, it could range to 3 years, but that's that scale inside. So if somebody gets in the door right now, they're gonna learn that process and trained up to get there. But it's probably a good 2-year program where we're trying to figure out, okay, now we're confident, we've demonstrated, and these are all checkoffs because even when you have a new apprentice mechanic, they're working under a seasoned certified mechanic. And it's under TMWA's name, so that's that responsibility that we bake into, okay, they're good. We trust everything they do because our reputation stands on that. So there's that, to your point, there's that period of time that once you get people in the door, I'd say it's a good 2 years to start mapping out. But you're right on even on the preventive maintenance side, that doesn't mean we can't start now. I think establishing that and taking a closer look now helps us get on that track.
And then my other question, John, do you have and I'm sure you do, but for us, so we can practically follow along and say, okay, here's a realistic plan. I mean, obviously we'd all like to have 2 workers for everybody to make sure we have a backup. That doesn't work. But if we know there are some retirements coming, we know that, so do you have something that you're planning, put together?
Yeah, I'll let Will speak to that.
I think what we would be looking to do is first establish a more robust process to do preventive maintenance work. And that's to put that, really lean into it and make this probably something like a goal. Very much like I noticed in the 2024 goals, we still have conversions. Because as we go on a SCADA side, where we have conversions to get rid of the old software onto something working, there are conversions that are required in this preventive maintenance too, to get in front of software end of life and stuff like that. I would say maybe it's appropriate to take that next step, set a goal very similarly to that on preventive maintenance, increase it by X%. I've already talked to the maintenance manager, Eric Mothershed. He's ready for a challenge. Let's set a number and let's start working at it, and we'll figure out this is what we need to accomplish that in a reasonable fashion. And that sets that time frame. It's not going to happen today, but not only planning for the exits that we know about, but planning for those exits on these life-changing events and changing careers and somebody winning the lottery. It puts us in a real bind because we just can't snap our fingers and get somebody. I would say that.
It would be similar to the ASR goal where it's 9,000. We know that's not an immediate goal we can hit right away, but it's a long term and we'll continue to try to make progress towards.
I'll make it ambitious. I would say we'll shoot for 20%. We can set a goal on that level and see what we do.
And so if the board is amenable to it, that's the type of goal we could add to these future goals. It would probably be in the operations section to increase preventative maintenance by 20%.
Still going back and forth between 15 and 20, but I'm gonna shoot high. We're gonna shoot 20.
All right.
Any questions, thoughts, concerns? Are we on the right track?
That sounds good. I have a few just other questions on both. Is that the time now? Okay. Page 6. So we said under natural resources 5 presentation, we did 21. But was that because it's something special and we don't want to push ourselves to do more in the community?
A lot of those were the American Flat, A+ water presentations and workshops. And we don't control the TROA or those specific topics. So if you wanted to increase it to 10, we can, or more, it's up to you. But we set it at 5 a few years ago just to see how it played out and how many requests we had come in. But I think this past fiscal year was majority of that had to do with American Flat and A+.
And this is, arbitrary probably, but just as long as we're saying yes when people are asking us to come out.
Oh, yes, as long as, staff is available,
Right.
scheduling, of course, we are.
We would never say, we hit 5, we're not doing 6.
I know. I'm like, wait, should we, I don't know if you should push yourself or not. But then on page 1, under customer satisfaction, efforts and assistance with local agencies related to homeless issues, we have just nothing there. And you said because we don't know, or?
Yeah, when this goal was introduced a few years ago during the height of the houseless issue and projects coming down the pipeline, we were working very closely with City of Reno, Sparks, Washoe County, and when the CHAB was established, especially. We're not in that field.
Right.
So if any of the jurisdictions or agencies come to us and, how can you help, then that project will show up in that target when the results are presented next year.
Okay.
So that's why it's linked.
I think the reason we put that in there, just to speak to it, is because we found ourselves with all this stuff going on affecting the river on a regular basis.
Sure.
But I think it almost felt like Tom was like, well, we do water. Well, this is affecting your water. And we're all trying to really stand up and be a part of this answer. And so we wanted to make sure that wherever it seemed appropriate, they were there. But I don't know that we ever said, and, so because it's not our space so much, but it is our space, but it affects our space. And so I'd say if there's things that we think they're a good idea, at least the door's open to utilize
When we did the nutrition center on our well site, we donated the land.
Yeah, I mean, that could have been counted towards your.
Well, yeah, that counted last.
Oh, that was the.
That was 2 years ago.
No,
2 years ago.
2 years ago.
Yeah, then we donated that land. So we'll do whatever
We're
we
at the
need to
table.
help. We're at the table.
Yeah.
We just,
If you want, I can add like a little asterisk there that just says target is not identified, unless projects come to TMWA. Or sure. Or you were just asking why there was no target.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's been blank just in case.
But it is important that you just know that if there's something that comes up that you think that this is a space that that rubs up against TMWA, let's make sure that is why we did that.
Right.
So next year, pending the planning and design and construction of Portland Loo, if it is stood up and, we have the ribbon cutting and it's operational before the end of the year, then that will be one project listed under that in the results, for example. Other questions?
So that we'd be looking for just acceptance, a motion to accept the goals as amended with the preventative maintenance goal. And I think we could increase our presentations to 10 if that's possible. So I think make a motion with those changes.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passed unanimously. On to 14, possible discussion of possible action regarding need and strategy for additional staff facilities. Danny Rodder, Levi, Library. Sorry,
we're here again. So this was a little more informal. I'll give you a brief summary of Levi and his team. He's the business information systems manager. But he's also our leader related to office space planning, cubicles, screens, all that sort of stuff. And so he's done a great job of helping manage and heard those needs across the company, whether it's an office over at Glendale or a projector that goes out in your room that you're going to have a board meeting. So with that, I'll hand it off to Levi to kick us off.
Sure, thanks, Danny. Levi Kleiber, Manager of Business and Information Systems. Got a timeline in front of you. We're going to walk down memory lane a little bit, kind of showing incremental improvements over the last nearly 20 years. TMWA was formed in 2001. The land was purchased and this building was built in 2005, took occupancy in early 2006. You can kind of see additions, modifications at our Glendale water treatment plant, our hydro office in Mogul. Many of these are tenant improvement type projects, such as reconfiguring offices, bathrooms, locker rooms, things of that nature. Kind of skip up to 2017, we have a pretty significant expansion of this building happening. Then in 2020, Silver Lining gave us the opportunity to do some work in the CSR area, do some security hardening, as well as installed our own fuel yard. And then just recently, we were able to convert some existing space at Glendale into some offices. But I want to also point out that it's not enough to just always be adding space. We wanted to take a hard look at workstation configuration and how we are using the space. And are there opportunities out there to make some changes to maximize the use of the space? And I'm happy to report that the answer is yes. We were able to net increase by 8 workstations, definitely in a couple of critical need areas. So at this point in time, I'm more than confident that we are using all the space we have as effectively as possible. Lastly, corporate office meeting space. Over time, especially with TMWA growth, our meeting spaces have become increasingly in short supply. So we gathered some key stakeholders and we identified the need to install what we are calling some meeting pods to try to alleviate that meeting room shortage, meeting and collaboration space shortage. So to date, we've actually added 2 small, call them phone booth-like rooms where someone can go have a Teams meeting, make a phone call, things of that nature. And then by the end of this year, we're going to be installing 1 XL meeting pod, which is more of a 4 to 6 person actual meeting room. And I think at that point, we'll be fully maxed out. So before I pass it back to Danny, have any questions?
If you've not had a chance to look at these pods, they literally look like a phone booth. They're phone booth. They're right down there, and they're just like, yeah, they're pretty cool.
Where do you put them? Where are both of these?
Excellent question. If we're out of space, where do we put them? We essentially put them. We find nooks in hallways to put them.
Yeah, we can show you. It's right behind that wall. We can show you.
I love the phone booth. It's what I've always looked for in airports. When you try to make a call and this is calling, you cannot hear that thing. I'm like, we need like a London phone booth. Someplace you could go in. It's quiet. It's right there.
It's used quite often, a little bit more frequently than I actually expected initially. So I would say that's a success.
Well, if you think of everyone sitting in their little pod, in their little area, it's loud and you can't have quiet if you're talking about something that's a little more, whatever, you don't want someone in the background deciding to throw an airplane at you or something like that, right?
So, this slide is talking a little bit about where we're headed and where we would have this item in front of you. Here at the corporate office, we have needs for more office space beyond those cubes. We have needs for storage space. We're currently combining between corporate and Glendale with leasing space over off Longley, Double R area. We have some more once we max out that pod situation, we're down conference space. And there's a little question mark about some shop space. Over at Glendale, we have a need for office space that we built those 4 offices, and I think 2 out of 4 are already filled, and the others will be shortly filled, as well as storage. Storage at Glendale and Chalk Bluff are both really important. A lot of those spare parts, spare pumps, they're actually just outside on the ground. And then at Chalk Bluff, we have a need for an emergency operations center. You're currently sitting in one location but it's also in a flood zone. So if you have a major flood and you're trying to manage the situation, you're not in your emergency operations center. So what are our options and what are our plans? At corporate, we've looked at expanding this building again. We've looked at another shop and warehouse expansion. Currently in our CIP, we've got about a $3.5 million number for a corporate office expansion. But we're limited by parking. It's not actually the land for the building, it's the land for the parking. Because all of our field staff park their field vehicles here as well as their personal vehicles. So they come to work, they take a parking space, they go get a vehicle, and then they take off. So we're under parked because of that scenario. Over at Glendale, we've looked at basically moving the current little metal building that's there as a smaller shop, using it for storage, building a new building with a shop below and an office space above. We've got about $3 million in the CIP for those 2 things. And then at Chalk Bluff, we have a need for a conditioned storage space, but maybe we could flex it for an EOC. So we've got $2.5 million in the CIP for that emergency operations center. We're looking at a potential grant through the Nevada Department of Emergency Management to help fund that, which would be cool. So we got about $9 million in the next 5 years to look at these various things. And if you look at the timeline that Levi showed, we've kind of been doing this for, go back, we've done these little 6,000 square feet office remodel, 8,000 square feet, 5,000 square feet, almost, continuously. And so we've done these kind of things that get us 4 and 5 and 6 years. We recently had the opportunity, although it flew by, to purchase what we call the call center building, just our neighbor to the northeast. The price was about $6 million for 30,000 square feet, which would have met almost all these things. And they didn't select ours, even though we were close to the high number and throwing in an offer, because we had to come back to the board for approval. And so they wanted to close by the end of the year, and our timing just didn't work. So they said, thanks, but no thanks. Have a nice day. So one of the things we wanted to come to you and talk about is, we've got these plans to build things, but there's this other potential to make strategic acquisitions. And so the reason we kind of threw this on here for possible action is to want to get your input on how to go about a potential acquisition like that. As of right now, the way we've talked about it, the way we would go about it if we had to do it again currently is trying to do a quick special meeting. Trying to find time on all your calendars is tough. So we thought about, maybe there's another way to go about it, a small subcommittee or something, where that subcommittee has some sort of authority to go meet with us on a short basis to look at these things. So kind of leaving it for the discussion. John, if you have any other thoughts, but there's nothing in sight right now. The one that hit us happened within a week. I mean, the turnaround went like that. We were kicking ourselves going, man, if we would have saw that call centers are dead because of COVID and everybody working at home, maybe we would have thought differently. But anyways.
No, Danny covered it. It's really just to bring the board up to speed on what we're looking at as space constraints. And under my GM authority, TMWA can't purchase property without board approval if it exceeds 100,000, unless it's within the budget and the CIP that's already approved. And so if we did an office expansion, a purchase for an office that had to happen right away, we would have to call a special meeting of the board. So we just wanted to give all of you a heads up that could be happening future. And then just get your thoughts on, do I just keep the chair, vice chair updated on where we're at, form a committee that can kind of help us weigh options, or do we just leave it to staff to come forward with a special meeting when we see a property we want to purchase?
Well, I don't think you're gonna get around the board still needing to approve it, so.
No, that's required.
I feel like if you wanted to bring it to a subcommittee, we have a legislative subcommittee, you could expand it to be add a duty if you wanted. I don't know if that's necessary. So I'm fine with the special meeting. We have those on occasion at the county. I would say on the corporate office, one thing that maybe needs to be looked at, and maybe it doesn't, but at RTC, they created a board room. So staff doesn't have to leave, get their stuff, and go to Sparks. They stay in their office and the board comes to them, and then also that, all their they have a ton of subcommittees as we do. They use that space. So I think it was well worth their investment. So I don't know if that's on the list of, what that could look like for the corporate office.
With the call center, there was enough space there that was on our mind as far as having a dedicated space for board meetings. At corporate, I think we're so space constrained in the offices and other needs that we couldn't do it here unless there was an expansion. But like Danny said, then you have parking issues if you expand too much. And then getting to committees, I think I'm fine with just calling a special meeting as soon as we can fit it on everybody's calendars. We'll walk through everything we talked about. At that point, we'll have an appraisal that we can talk through and just get your approval to go forward on.
So this $9 million you want to spend over 5 years, is that included into this rate hike, contemplated in the rate hike?
This is currently in the 5-year CIP.
Which involves the rate hike coming on. So I get that. I don't mind, I appreciate this. I do think it's good for the special agencies to have their own board setting. And frankly, I think this could fix it. This could be a board setting. Seems to work fine, and we don't have that much more. Plus you've got your staff here so they can, shepherd in and out. I'm not that big of a person concerned about parking because I see a heck of a lot of street parking down here, on here, there's street parking on here. But I do think a special meeting is the way, unless we drop it into the CIP, we drop it into the budget, then you have authority, then you do have authority. And so, that puts me as, pursuant to the budget, even if it's a placeholder, pursuant to the CIP, an offer's made, we entered into interest prior to close, I need to have this meeting. So, but you have some mechanics to do to get there. Amend the CIP, amend the budget. So that might be the way to do it rather than a special meeting, because it might give you better efficiencies if you have to act fast.
Yeah, because it's probably one of the things that I think these guys pushed off is that they're not waiting for us. So yeah, that's an idea. I did have one question. Have you thought about going up?
We have. There was some rumor going around that it was ready to go. Although the structural plans and that's not the case. So we've talked about, if you do that, you're taking a group of people and leasing something before you then go up. Yeah. Displacing a bunch of people to go somewhere. You got remote options too, but the main win on this site itself is just the parking. Putting all those vehicles as you add field staff that have the basic comes with too. So we actually were talking to that call center owner about buying a part of that parcel because they're overparked for a call center. They're overparked for even a regular office building. And they were okay, and then all of a sudden it hit the market crazy. So even if we went up, even when we did it, instead of expanding the office and we went up as an expansion, we're still limited on that parking.
Councilman Reed?
Yes, I didn't have a lot to add. I think most of my colleagues' comments reflect my interest. But one thing I sort of, as hearing all the comments now in total, is it seems like we're either sort of walking on eggshells about it or not addressing fully and robustly the goal, which is if we have capital needs, let's make investments in the organization, right? I don't think that you'll get much pushback from us when it comes to making sure that you are good financial stewards of the resources we have, while also acknowledging that the organization has grown. It is outgrown many of the current facilities it has. If the answer is we need to go somewhere else and build a larger facility that meets all these needs, let us have that conversation, right? I would much rather have us have the more robust conversation and not sort of the Band-Aid approach of fixing things along the way, because all of our organizations have capital needs, and if this is the one that we believe is important to the success of the organization and its goals moving forward, just let us have a very robust and head-on conversation about it, rather than asking about the one-offs about various spaces and extending it out over 5 years. I understand the way in which it is funded through the rate structure system, but at the end of the day, I worry that you're still just putting a Band-Aid on a larger issue, because I doubt that as our region continues to grow in whatever way it will, that we're going to get smaller. So rather, let us just get head on with it, and we'll make good decisions from a leadership level to do it. And I think you do excellent work with creating the budgets and creating the long-term range and long-term planning, perhaps better than some of the other entities that we all are parts of. And so I trust both Andy and the staff's position as we move forward. Tell us what you want to do, and we, I think, are going to be supportive of the direction you take. I myself am not going to decide whether today we'll have more parking somewhere or move that. Let us have one big conversation about it.
Yeah, no, and I think that's exactly right. That's exactly where we're at. We've been struggling and trying to make it work over time. Like with everything, we look at trying to make it as efficient as possible before going out with kind of a new building. But I think your comments are spot on.
So question on your CIPs, do you not or have you not incorporated a possible building or land acquisition as part of the CIP? Or is it a possibility? Because I agree with Ms. Ruckus, if it's wrapped into here's our options, we need expansion or we need parking lot or whatever you need, gives this board the authority under the CIP approval and options, obviously CIP, that would be a whole lot more, but can you incorporate it as part of that, or the requirement to purchase a building? Is that policy within this board that has to come back to the board, or could it be part of, as you do a budget in the CIP, it's understood that's when the cost should be making?
In hindsight, when I look at all these as an engineer, I was thinking too short-sighted. We put 4 projects in the CIP, and then a call center came up that was 30,000 square feet. I'm like, why didn't we just put that in there, an acquisition? So I think where we're really headed is that CIP provision. I think both of you hit on it. That will include that as an option. I think that's probably our next discussion point, unless something comes up in the next few months. But our tentative CIP will probably include an alternative for that, 20-year investment instead of these 5,000 square feet here, 5,000 square feet there type things.
Mm-hmm. You could even have a facility plan, a separate, you got your, all others, you could have a administrative facility plan.
And that's exactly what Danny's talked about the last couple of years, marrying the water facility plan with a resource plan, with head count and facility. So that's what. So this item is tasked for action, but I think it was just to get comments and feedback. The only potential action would be if we wanted to do a committee, but I think we've heard from you, got your comments, and we can move forward with the comments pursued.
So no action required. Great. We're going to move on to general manager's report, and we're close to 1:30, so you're doing great.
So in the general manager report, there's one additional item that we've included. Every so often we get thank yous from customers, Marcy staff and the call center staff. They go above and beyond sometimes and send cards to customers that have had an issue with their water service. We got that taken care of, but they might have also talked about some personal issue they're going through. And Marcy's call center and her staff does a great job with working with the customers. So we wanted to start including those because a lot of times the board hears all the bad things, you know, when things go bad and customers complain and that sort of thing. So we wanted to give you that side of it. Also, wanted to thank Marcy. She's done an excellent job on getting folks signed up for the paperless billing. I think, Marcy, we're now at what as far as percentage?
40%.
So 40% of our customers on paperless billing and saving annually
Almost $400,000 a year.
almost 400,000. So it's a huge impact for Tumble. So thank you for that. And just real quickly, as you may have heard, the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources had $100 million of ARPA funding through the governor's office. The director, James Settlemeyer, set aside $25 million for a water right retirement program and then $75 million for water conservation infrastructure projects. And so we put together a grant. Cara Steeland, Amanda Filet, Laura Rader all did a ton of work. There were others on the team. Put together a grant application, actually 2 of them, for our Oreditch Hydro Pump Station and for our AMI project, our advanced meter infrastructure. And I'm happy to report that the state awarded us $9.5 million for our AMI project. We have about $13.5 million to go on that project. So that's a huge win. And just, I wanted to thank staff for putting that together. Also wanted to introduce, we hired a staff attorney, Dan Bell, who's in the audience. He comes from the Attorney General's office where he represented Division of Environmental Protection and state land. So it's good to have another attorney on staff. I wanted to thank Chair Dare again for remembering Mark Ludwig, our data analyst, and work with, you know, just a very unique personality, and we miss him a lot at Tumble. So we appreciate that. And just like we do with everything, you know, Tumble's kind of rallied around, works family with one another just for support as we go through this. And then as far as my review today, I just want to thank the board for the input. It's very much appreciated. You know, I tell people that, you know, tell me your opinion. You're not going to offend me. It's good, bad, indifferent, whatever it is. So I appreciate that because it helps, and I think our team appreciates that. I do want to say that, you know, the positive comments you had from me are really a reflection of the staff and the management team over the last year and a half or so. We put a ton of effort, a lot of time into succession planning, employee development. And that's above and beyond their day jobs, getting the work done that they have to get done. So it's just commendable. So I want to thank them for that. And with that, sure.
Any questions or thoughts for our general fund? Very good. We're going to move on to public comment. Any public comment? No public comment. Any board comments, requests, or future agenda items? Very good. And I gotta wait 1 minute to 2:30 to 1:30.
Well, I have something to hand out. You have for the proposed rate adjustment meetings, the public meetings, I have a little flyer for y'all, so you'll know when they are. So.
Okay, now you're cut off. We're gonna adjourn.
Appreciate it.